Well, hello, and welcome to the EcoCast by Actual Tech Media. Our topic today, supporting, improving, and securing education and government IT and cloud. You know, I love these kinds of EcoCasts because it means that everyone here today has a shared and common experience. Everyone in the audience today is involved in some way or at least interested in public institutions. And that's a fun commonality to explore because, as we know, a lot of the considerations that affect all of you are pretty industry specific. So today we'll learn about the trending ideas, obstacles, and opportunities that are top of mind for government and education IT environments. Now, there is a lot to cover here, and luckily we will be joined by some amazing humans from Sophos, Gigamon, Rubrik, Progress Software, Synology, and CrowdStrike. These experts are here to help us explore innovative new tools and solutions that will address common challenges and unlock new opportunities for government and education institutions. Now, if you have not joined us for an EcoCast in the past, a very special welcome to all of you first-timers out there. Actual Tech Media created the EcoCast and the MegaCast series to help educate IT professionals like yourself on the latest innovations and trends in enterprise technology. So these events are designed to get you the hottest insight and up-to-date information efficiently from the comfort of your home or office, wherever you're working. MegaCast and EcoCast allow you to pose and answer questions, to connect with other experts in your field, and to help you solve your most pressing technology challenges. Now, before we get into our session here today, there's a few things that you should know about this EcoCast. Now, of course, we do have some awesome prizes lined up for you, so if your eyes went right to that prize icon, hang on, I'm going to come back to those in just a moment. But first, I want to draw your attention over to that questions tab in your webinar control panel. If you haven't already said hi, we love seeing people connecting from across the world, so drop a greeting, give a wave to your friends in the Actual Tech Media community. Now, that questions console also a great place to let us know about any technical issues that might come up today. Hopefully there aren't any, but if so, a quick browser refresh is going to clear out most of the usual tech gremlins. But if not, shoot us a message in that questions console and the Actual Tech Media crew will be there to help. But the most important thing is that we want this to be an informative and engaging event for you, which means we want those technical questions. So throughout today's EcoCast, we hope that you'll be sure to get involved and ask all of your burning questions. Not only will we have team members responding to you during the live event, but we also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of each presentation. And if we do not get to your question during our live webinar today, don't worry. The awesome humans from Sophos, Gigamon, Rubrik, Progress Software, Synology, and CrowdStrike will be following up afterwards. Now, of course, that next icon there says social because we think that good things should be shared. So when you hear something interesting or exciting on today's EcoCast, be sure to get social and share that with your friends. You can use the Twitter button right there in your audience console, and the hashtag for today's event is going to be automatically added to your post. Now, while you're exploring that audience console, we talked about the questions tab. I want to draw your eyes over to the handouts tab. They're in that same little box there. You're going to find some fantastic resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. There's an awesome collection of data sheets, white papers, demos. Be sure to click around in that handout section and download some of those awesome resources to read and share after the webinar today. Now, at this point, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Jess Steinbach with Actual Tech Media. I'm so excited to be your moderator for this EcoCast, along with Scott Becker, who will be joining us in just a moment. And the good news just keeps coming because, and I said we'd come back to this, on today's EcoCast, we will also be giving away 3 $500 Amazon gift cards to 3 lucky winners. Now, of course, you must be in attendance during the live webinar to qualify for the prize and meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions, which you can find going back on over to that handouts tab. If you remember, we were just chatting about it. If you scroll down to the bottom, there's the full T's and C's loaded in there for you as well. Now, as I mentioned, we love hearing all of your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much that we actually have a special additional prize for all of you inquisitive folks out there. So in today's EcoCast, we will be giving away a $50 Amazon gift card to the best question asked in each of our live sessions, not just once, all of them. The teams are reviewing these questions asked after the webinar, which means that even if your question does not get asked live, there's still a chance to win. So make sure to get those questions in, and we will follow up with you after the webinar. Threw up a few quick reminders for you on the screen here, including the fact that all grand prize winners are required to submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media. And again, you can see those full T's and C's in the handout section. Now, if you are a winner here today, you always have the option to donate the value of the prize to one of our selected charities. Thanks to generous prize winners on previous Actual Tech Media webinars, thousands of dollars have been donated to these wonderful charities. So if you are a winner and you would like to get involved with one of these amazing organizations, let us know, because we would love to help make that happen. As I mentioned, we're pretty excited to have you here live with us today, and we want to keep chatting with you. So reach out to us on Twitter and Facebook. Make sure to follow. You can also find us on YouTube. Lots of awesome webinars on demand, so be sure to check those out. We've got great content for you on LinkedIn. Just amazing, amazing opportunities for further reading after the webinar. Don't run away just yet. And speaking of which, if you have not already checked out the Actual Tech Media Guerrilla Guide Book Club, now is the time. The Guerrilla Guide Book Club gives you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts. So you can stay up to date on trending enterprise technologies. And yes, these books will work on your Kindle or mobile device. So if you're doing some cabin or lakeside reading this summer, this is a great opportunity for you. They are all completely free. You can download these exciting resources at GuerrillaGuide.com. There's a link in the Handouts tab for you as well. So make sure to grab that before you head out today. Now, I don't know if this is clear, but we're pretty big fans of all of you here today, and we want to meet more awesome people in your community. So another great way to win a prize today is to refer an industry friend or coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. You're going to find a link to do that right in your Handouts tab. You will also be automatically redirected at the end of the webinar. Now, we promise not to spam your friends. I know that's always a concern. We will send them an invitation to a list of upcoming webinars, and if they don't respond, they're only going to get one more reminder from us, and we promise that's it. Then both you and your coworker or friend could win a $300 Amazon gift card. We hold those drawings every month. So you both get cool content, and your friends will all thank you for that. Plus, you could each win $300. So that's just win-win-win right there. That's a great option. All right, now before we dive in, I want to see how awake you all are out there. So we're going to do a quick poll. So our question for you today is, if somebody asked you to describe your role in the organization at a high level, how would you describe yourself? So would you say tech, as in I work in tech? Or would you say IT department, as in I'm in IT, or something else entirely? And if it's something else entirely, we would love to hear that from you, so please feel free to post that in the chat. This is just a great way for us to get to know you a little bit better. I think how we identify ourselves in these industries can say a lot about how we approach some of these discussions and how we think about these solutions and tools. So take a minute now, let us know, how do you describe what you do when you're chatting with your friends and family? Okay, so this is our first test of the day to see how awake everyone is. Clearly, everyone has had their coffee today, so that's excellent. And we have a lot of IT folks out there today. That's our overwhelming majority. Okay, I'm going to move this along, but if you didn't get a chance to answer the poll, again, please feel free to shoot us a message in the chat there. Okay, well, let's get into some of our exciting content. To kick us off, I am so excited to introduce my friend and fellow moderator, Scott Becker. Now, today, Scott is joined by none other than the Actual Tech Media's CEO and co-founder, Scott Lowe. That's right, guys, it is a double Scott extravaganza. And this gathering of Scots is even more exciting because, besides being our fearless leader, Scott Lowe has years of experience as a CIO in higher education, as well as several IT positions with colleges, public schools, cities, and nonprofits. So the Scots are here today to talk to us about digital transformation and what the last years of change have meant for public institutions, the good and the bad, the obstacles and the challenges. So without any further ado, I will hand the mic over to Scott. Pick a Scott, any Scott. Over to you, Scott Squared.
Well, Scott, IT environments of all kinds have been transformed over the last few years by the pandemic crash course in digital transformation. What are some of the distinct challenges that governments and educational institutions still face from that rapid digital transformation?
The whole world was pretty well impacted by COVID and the resulting digital transformation, forced digital transformation that took place. And I'm going to talk a lot about higher education for a second here, but particularly that segment of the industry, it really was forced digital transformation. There was no plan to make everyone remote in an environment where in-person is really the key to success. So when we think about digital transformation in that context, a lot of those institutions expended budgetary dollars, staff time, and a lot of resources in ensuring continued operations, just like everybody did around the world. And as we look at, getting back to normal, whatever normal looks like now, there's going to have to be a refocus on what the plan was, where we're going to move to the future. And I think with an eye towards making sure that if this ever happens again, we can react better even than we did, a couple of years ago, in terms of, reorienting the workforce to a remote centric operation. But I think the important thing is, as governments, educational institutions, everybody really is going to have to get off the COVID train at this point as much as you can. It's still here, and rethink what digital transformation means for them. And that's going to be, the mindset has been very emergency centric, COVID centric. What does it look like more in a normalized world?
Those are great points, and especially, being ready to react again. I remember early in the pandemic, it seemed like, okay, the vaccines will arrive and, it's kind of, I don't know, like looking at the last problem to how can we get back into a remote setting if we need to? But, with all the variants, certainly one could be virulent again, and we could very quickly be back in the situation.
And that's happening in some places. I mean, there's news that some places looking at shutting down again. I mean, not in the U.S. necessarily, but this is going to be a recurring thing. And given other things that are happening in the world, the potential for climate change to bring new pandemics, I think organizations are going to have to take into consideration as part of their digital transformation efforts to more quickly react in the event that there is another pandemic or something that impacts the business in ways we can't foresee right now.
And let's switch gears a little bit. There have been two big trends shaping IT budgets for the last few years. Obviously, this digital transformation, pandemic stuff is one huge one. But the other one has been ransomware. And, that's just an ongoing, scourge.
Yeah.
What has that meant specifically for higher ed and, and education and governments?
Again, it's one of those things that nobody wants to spend money on in insurance. And really, when you think about ransomware preparedness, there is a risk management perspective to that. But most institutions are taking it seriously. The ones I've talked to are very aware that ransomware is a problem, and they've all heard about a neighbor that succumbed to ransomware, or a sister institution somewhere in the U.S. or around the world that was hit by ransomware and had some pretty serious problems as a result. As we look at a lot of cyber insurance policies, for example, institutions are being forced to reckon with some kind of ransomware preparedness plan. And it's not just cyber insurance policies. Even part of the audit process now is taking into consideration the need to have a robust and defined security program that includes ransomware preparedness capabilities and recovery capabilities as a part of that plan. So institutions, through various mechanisms, are taking it seriously. They're taking the right steps to try to address it, but they still struggle a little bit because there's no ROI. I mean, obviously there is if you happen to get hit by ransomware. But especially when you look at budget-constrained environments, and typically education and governments are, the money that you'd spend on a ransomware program, for example, is money that something else isn't getting. That's a key difference between a for-profit business and a not-for-profit or government entity. That there's a more finite set of dollars to go around, and so when you think about these security programs, we have to prioritize those along with everything else. And it's part of a risk management strategy. So the organization has to decide how important is this, and that the components of that include the tolerance for a potential outage, an audit requirement, and the cyber insurance security policy requirements.
Yeah, those are great points about ransomware. And, so we've been talking about ransomware and digital transformation, and not to stretch a metaphor, but those are sort of the two big elephants in every room. What are some of the other immediate challenges that organizations have right now, aside from those two things?
Staffing. I mean, this is one that I've heard firsthand from a number of institutions in recent months. One of the things that the pandemic did do was prove that remote works. And regardless of what you see in the news, remote's here to stay for a lot of organizations. And where we used to see these smaller institutions and more rural areas, have sort of a landlocked set of potential staff to pull from.
Yeah.
Those staff people, the world is their orchard now. I mean, it's really their playground. They can go anywhere they want and work from home. And so one of the things we've seen these institutions have to contend with is not being able to have the ready-made staff at hand that they had before. And the people that they had are leaving for pastures that are higher salaries, and not having to move or take other steps like you would normally have to do in the old days, to take a new job. They can work from home. And so and that's not just education that's going to face this. This is happening with all organizations everywhere. The remote environment is fundamentally reshaping really what it means to work. And so our communities have changed, our workplaces have changed, and employers, including colleges, including governments, are going to have to figure out new ways to entice people to stay, especially for those organizations that, as I mentioned before, have those budgetary challenges. They're going to have to think about what they bring to the table for employees, that would make employees want to stay in ways that they haven't had to do before. I think that's the big one that's looming right now, and we hear it in the news as well, right? We hear about staffing shortages. Well, colleges and governments are no exception to those news stories.
Gotcha. Yeah, and then there's that Bill Gates quote about we all overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can do in 10. Sort of the same question, but like on a longer with a longer lens. What are some of the big opportunities for IT in education and government?
In education, I mean, it's interesting because IT has often been seen as a cost center in education. It's basically just something to pay for to keep the lights on. Those entities that look at IT as a strategic enabler are ones that are going to be able to get a competitive edge as they move into the future. And that's just the way it's always been. And this is not just limited to education and government. This is across the board. These organizations that look at IT more strategically, stop thinking about IT as a cost center, as in an area of investment, are going to be ones that thrive into the future. And we still don't see that in as prevalent a way as we'd like to. We still see a lot of organizations look at IT as just as an expense to be managed rather than an investment to be exploited. I have a friend of mine that I worked very closely with in higher ed, and we were both very budget bound, right? I mean, it's price conscious. And he needed to buy some wireless access points for the business he's working for now. And there's a shortage on everything. And so the access points were going to be like $3,000 a piece, and they're normally $700. And his boss said, buy as many as you can get. I don't care how much they cost, because they were losing revenue by not having those devices. And it's just a very different mindset. So those colleges and governments have to think about what they can do with an investment versus what they can do with cutting costs or managing costs in a different way in order to be able to get the maximum advantage from their IT environment. And it's something I think that a lot of them will struggle with.
Well, Scott, you've given us a lot to think about today. Really appreciate your time.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Oh man, I love that. Thank you to both the Scotts for getting us started on such a great note. That was such an interesting conversation to sit in on. Always a great time when you're hanging out with the Scotts. And now, as you can see, I have another question for all of you here today. What is your time frame for taking action on some of the solutions that you will be learning about today? So when do you think that you might be looking to implement some of these strategies or solutions that we're going to be chatting about? As Scott B just mentioned, with underestimating what we can do in 10 years versus, overestimating what we can do in a year. Are you guys thinking a year out? Are you thinking months out? Are you thinking many years out? So just give us a quick idea of where you're kind of thinking time frame wise. And what I'm seeing here is a lot of not sures, which is awesome. I love that. That means that you guys are open to all possibilities right now and just kind of figuring things out. So on that note, let's get to some of our sessions, which will maybe help give you some clarity on what the timeline might look like for you. So it is my pleasure to introduce you to our first presenter in today's EcoCast, Jeremy Kopacos, Senior Sales Engineer at Sophos. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us. I know our audience is pumped and ready to get started on this EcoCast, so I will hand things over to you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us here for this broadcast. It's always very exciting and humbling to talk to an audience, especially when you come from the audience's vertical. So a little bit about myself. My name is Jeremy Kopacos. I am a senior engineer here at Sophos. I've been with the company. I just celebrated my 4-year anniversary. So for those that have worked in this game a little bit now, you know that it's like dog years. So I'm coming up my 30th year in my mind. I also like to talk about the fact that I used to work in education. So I actually cut my teeth in this industry. I spent about 5 years doing a number of roles from help desk, ultimately ending up as a director in the final 3 years of my life there and moving on into the private space. And it's always exciting to come back and talk about cybersecurity specifically and how it's impacting education, because I've been fortunate enough to see it on both sides. So let's get rocking and rolling here and talk a little bit about that. In today's agenda, we're going to cover essentially 5 big things. The first part, we're going to focus about the landscape around cyber insurance and how quickly we've seen things really escalate. And we talk about escalation in terms of the security risk and the security trends that are going across the education space itself. And with that, we talk about the changes, specifically in the cyber insurance requirements. I've been in this space long enough to know back in the day, there was a 1-page checklist of do you have AV and do you have passwords? We're going to talk a little bit about how Sophos is helping that space and leave you with some tips to minimize your risk exposure. And I think you'll be very, very pleased with the outcome of this talking point. So let's get rocking and rolling. One of the first things I like to introduce is that the writing has been on the wall for some time. Anybody that's had the opportunity to see some past presentations about Sophos, or if you've seen in general, there's always a theme in cybersecurity challenges. And that really theme is to follow the money, right? Everything at the end of the day is a business. So this article I'm sharing is actually from the Harvard Business Review from January of 2021. So a little over a year now, coming up on 18 months of age. And they highlighted some disturbing changes throughout their 2020 research. They looked at it and said, hey, the findings are showing a propensity to favor the adversary. 2020 was a pivotal year for the cybersecurity space, because that's when the pandemic happened. And consequently, many workers shifted from a remote environment, leaving that traditional perimeter-based infrastructure that we've all known to grow, love, and somewhat hate. Because of this, it created a breeding ground for cyber attacks. Many people tagged it the year of the digital pandemic. According to the title of hack.com, there were 1.4 million confirmed attacks in 2020, and the success rate was over 90%. Insurance, like a business, relies on market and business analysts to look at key analytics and identify how to remain profitable and sustain that profitability moving forward. The one challenge we have here as we talk about the insurance landscape is it does not have the same rich set of data that maybe car insurance or homeowners insurance may provide. The cybersecurity industry is still relatively young when you start to compare it to some of its other beasts that are out there. So this starts to create a year-to-year evaluation cycle, which is largely what many of you are seeing in your space today. So as you look at this, many of the security analysts and those responsible for underwriting and creating these protections really struggle to predict the future. And we're seeing organizations of all verticals and industries being tasked to increase their security footprint through control mechanisms, education, and ongoing monitoring services just to achieve their cybersecurity insurance requirements. Now, I think, again, as we talk about money, it's really important to see this chart and see the jump. So this is actually the direct income loss ratio that was paid out to claimants over the last 5 years. Now, if we really wanted to look, we would really just want to see 2020 on, but it's always good to see the 5-year trend. So 2017 to 2019, not bad numbers. Under a 50% loss rate is decent, but not ideal. But in 2020 and 2021, we can see the jump hits well over 70%. and well over 60% in each of those respective years. When these loss ratios dramatically shift, such as the cycle we're in now, you're often going to see a reset in the market conditions. So as we look and move forward, we're starting to see the realignment of the market and, in our opinion, pricing cyber risk that accurately reflects the new working conditions. Because of that shift, we're seeing consequently the rise of premiums. So again, if we go and keep in mind the slide we just talked about with the loss ratio, the trend in premiums, again in 2020, greatly shifts, and even greater in 2021. Now, as we just look at the percentages, and I do like numbers, I sometimes fancy myself a numbers guy, the premiums from 2020 to 2021 increased 92%. So as you look at this, you may think, okay, if the cost of my insurance premium is rising 92%, should my coverage and protection expand with that? Unfortunately, that is not the case. What this jump is showing is how the market has reset itself to mostly show a stricter criteria and coverage, especially in the private sector. And if you're unable to demonstrate these baseline controls, the marketplace is going to reject your business and deem you too risky to secure. In fact, many will cite the May 2021 breach of the Colonial Pipeline to drive this increase across different verticals and industries once the federal government released the new risk regulations. You may also see that there's some fine print for what may be known as an active war exclusion, citing that the fallout of the Russian invasion of Ukraine has created somewhat of a gray area in coverage. And we always recommend that you have those conversations directly with your insurance provider for full accuracy. We do like to talk about some of the research our Sophos team does as well, in addition to just what we can see in the marketplace. So if you look at our Sophos State of Ransomware 2022 report, and if you've not had the opportunity to do so, it is a report that we're very proud of and work very long and hard on. Definitely recommend taking the time to examine this and see what type of info is available for you. But just high level, of the respondents we've talked to, 94% of all respondents are saying that the process to secure it has changed. Of that, over half are saying that it's now harder to qualify. Almost half are saying that the policies are more complex. Less companies are offering this. The process is longer and it's more expensive. Now, there is a large survey of respondents on this. I definitely recommend digging into these numbers a little bit deeper, but it's interesting to see this across a broad portfolio of verticals and industries that are being, hit with these changes. Now, you may be asking yourself, what really comes into mind when you look at cybersecurity insurance? And we like to break it down to 5 pillars. And we talk about your size, your industry, vertical, location, your revenue opportunity. Those are all what make up your demographics. The type of volume and or the sensitive data that you are storing, collecting, and or processing will define your potential exposure. The level of the cybersecurity comes into play. This is actually where the security defenses or controls that the organization is using are evaluated. What about the history, right? It doesn't just look at your personal claim history, it's looking at your entire vertical history. So in the education space, how much of a risk are the rest of the claimants getting compared to just you? And of course, the policy terms. What is your coverage limit, hypothetically? Now, you may be thinking to yourself, cybersecurity risk? That this is the subject matter we're worried about? Not the energy sector, not the manufacturing sector, not finance, not healthcare, education? Yes. And I hope everybody gets the Allen Iverson reference to practice back in 2001 or 2002. But education saw a 75% jump in increase, the highest, only outpacing healthcare by just a few percentage points. Why is that, right? Why is education such a target? Well, one, you have a lot of very valuable data, and this can vary, right? For higher education, as an example, let's think back to the pandemic, right? The institutions that were tasked with grant funding to do the research of COVID-19 and hopefully provide some level of medical solution had a lot of proprietary knowledge and secrets during their research. That data has to be considered, highly valuable in the right hands. Now, in the primary education side, you may be saying, well, we don't do such things? Why are we held to the same, risk assessment? And it's because it can be fiscally valuable. Oftentimes, when you look at public consumer information, that data has a ransom that is perceived as highly influential to the right audience. Not to stereotype, but at times they can be perceived as easier targets, not as the IT or security team, but the end users. We're tasking educators to balance 20 to 30 students in their classroom, educate them, make sure that they're learning, and also be aware of all the risks when they go onto the internet, email, and other applications of security challenges they may face. This is always a recipe for chaos, and those active adversaries out there are very much aware of it. And probably the one we're all just waiting for me to get to and just kind of going, yep, if my CFO only knew, we're just missing security controls in the space. The budget constraint leads to sacrifices in protections, which leaves gaps and increased risk. There is good news. It looks like federally we're starting to actually see some differences happening here. The FTC has finally cracked down on companies that are illegally collecting student data. And if you've noticed, these data warehouses consequently have become a target because of how much information they've collected about our youth. Recently on Capitol Hill, a panel was meeting to discuss what can be done to improve the safety and security in education and healthcare. A cybersecurity director highlighted that the impacts that a K-12 can face, including lost instruction time, reputational damage, increased cost, and more, outpace what they can provide as funding. This comes at nearly a year to date after the White House signed an executive order to improve the nation's cybersecurity. They also argue that we're funding items physically like hardware or endpoint security and other software, but we're not funding the trained security professionals that are required to administer them. To put it in perspective, they said, imagine you're building a sports car, taking it to a big race, but you don't put gas in it. That is the strain we're putting on our public resources. I like to share this quote. This is actually a direct quote from one of the insurance providers, and I think it really sums up what's happening quite well. Insurers are looking for the use of security controls that they consider effective at preventing, detecting, and remediating malicious activity at various stages of the ransomware lifecycle. While cyber insurers ask a wide range of questions in their application, certain central themes have emerged that point to their principal ransomware concerns, and the security controls are the best they believe to address them. And what I'd like to do is talk about those themes and some of the questions that you can anticipate seeing. The first theme they're starting to evaluate is simply, let's keep the attackers out. And across those themes, there's some central ideas that you probably have been pushing for a number of years. Multi-factor authentication, right? Now that may be expanded to go beyond just email and looking at network or privilege level accounts. And also now, because of the risk of the supply chain, how are your vendors and external services communicating with you? Are you handling patch management? What are you doing for employee training? When your users are away from the network, how are they securely accessing things? Do you have end-of-life technology? And of course, as you look as a baseline control, what are your email and web filter systems? You're also going to see things around what are you doing for detecting intrusions and behavior. And this can be a combination of both endpoint protection products, or EPP, as well as endpoint detection and response products, EDR. Other things may come up in your questionnaire, such as, do you conduct vulnerability scans? What other endpoint protection solutions are you deploying? Do you have IDS and IPS offerings? Are you tasked with a SIM? Are you using a next generation firewall? These are all modern questions. We then slip outside of a bit of just the technology's concern and start looking at some of the access controls, or what they're theming as protecting the users and the privileged accounts. So you may see questions around identity access management, or IAM, privileged account management, or PAM. How are you defining your network segmentations to keep different departments and lines of business away from one another? What's your configuration management? Have you ran through operating system hardening? Do you run any Microsoft baseline protections? And how do you deal with service accounts? And of course, the great philosopher Mike Tyson once said, everybody has a plan until they get hit with malware. And you've guessed it. The final theme is around BCP, or business continuity planning. This is where they're going to ask about how are your backup practices set up. And for those in this space, you're probably versed with the concept of 3-2-1. You have 3 copies, 2 on site, 1 off site. How do you have that documented? Do you have incident response plans? If you are hit with something, what's your plan to go through this? And it's even going further than the checkbox. They're asking you to show how are you exercising tabletop activities. And of course, how can you identify and document your vendor response plan? Also, commonly you may see about disaster recovery planning. This is more around the times of different verticals where how quickly can you recover from the attack and make your business 100% productive again. So to give some more sampling out there, because I always think it's valuable to see some of the depth of questions you may ask, I've included this list. These are all copy pasted off of various vendors. I did not want to give a direct impact here from everybody, but just a catalog of probably 6 or 7 different offerings of things they're asking to the different directors and administrators at the education level, of things that you may be tasked with. I do understand that oftentimes big organizations may have a cyber risk officer, but if you are that individual, these are things you can look forward to answering. Now here at Sophos, we do like to point out we are here for you. We do offer things that can help you with this plan, and we talk about the security controls. So if you're looking at this, we can offer things from an endpoint security perspective, such as InterceptX with XDR. This is if you need to manage the offering entirely yourself, or if you want to have the coverage and comfort 24/7, 365 of monitoring and responding to the threats in your environment. We do offer MTR, which is our SOC team. We also venture into the cloud and network space. So you'll see that in our latest offering of Sophos Firewall, we offer next generation hardware that delivers zero trust and SD-WAN. And we also can offer network protection and monitoring for your cloud workload in Azure, AWS, or Google Cloud. As your organization looks to shift and modernize and adapt new integrated solutions, Sophos Central is prepared for such opportunity. And we call this our Sophos Adaptive Cybersecurity Ecosystem, or Sophos ACE. It provides organizations solutions through a cloud platform of cybersecurity hardware, software, services, and tools that can enhance existing controls with your current infrastructure through Sophos and third-party solutions. I always like to give back and have some sort of advice to go forward off of this. So as you start to look at ways to minimize your exposure, here's our top 5 tips. First and foremost, ensure high quality defenses at all points in your environment. Review your security controls regularly and make sure they continue to meet your needs and expectations. Proactively hunt for threats that you're able to stop adversaries before they execute their attack. If you don't have the time or skills in-house for this, we can always work to harden this with an external service. Harden your environment by searching and closing down any security gaps. Examples can include unpatched devices, unprotected machines, open ports, and more. Oftentimes, this is where an EDR or XDR solution can identify this. Prepare for the worst and know what to do when the cyber incident response is actually triggered, and who needs the contact to make the plan go effectively. And finally, have backups, practice restoring from them, and make sure that your goals are able to get back up and running quickly with minimum disruption to your end users. Hopefully you've enjoyed this content. Definitely find the opportunity to join us for part 2 of the series, where we'll be actually joined by Nicholas Kramer. He's our Senior Director of Global Cyber Risk Partnerships. Nick and I will be doing a Q&A session, so if you have questions in advance of us, please email security411@sophos.com, and we'll be sure to get the most populated questions answered for everybody, as well as have the follow-up material for you to reference afterwards. And again, looking forward to that session with Nick. We think it'll be a great time. Thank you so much for listening to this webinar. We greatly appreciate your time. My name is Jeremy. Stay safe and stay secure.
Oh, thank you so much, Jeremy, for joining us today. What an interesting presentation, an amazing way to kick off our EcoCast. I love the top 5 tips to minimize exposure, just some great, solid takeaways for everyone in the audience today. Now, I can see that we have a lot of questions coming in for you already, Jeremy. I wish we could dig into all of them, but we are a bit short on time on this EcoCast. So we're going to have to keep things moving. But don't worry, anyone who submitted a question, the Sophos team and Jeremy are going to follow up with you. So please do keep those questions coming in, and you will get answers to them. I've also put up a poll question for you all. We would love to get your feedback on any additional resources that you would like to explore from Sophos. So please do make sure to fill out that poll, share your thoughts with us. Just a really helpful way for the team to know how to follow up with you. If you are looking for more information right away, you can click into the Handouts tab and download that Sophos paper that Jeremy was actually just telling us about. So the state of ransomware in education in 2022. Absolutely fascinating reading, so definitely snag that for later. So again, a big thank you to everyone who asked a question and is filling out that poll right now. I'm going to leave it up just a little bit longer because it is time for our first prize drawing of the day. Are you guys excited? I'm excited. All right, so remember that all winners must be in attendance at the live webinar today. We will be in touch about claiming your prize after we wrap. And our very first winner of our $500 Amazon gift card today is Connor Stillwagon of Missouri. Connor Stillwagon of Missouri. Congratulations to Connor. Don't forget that there are still more chances to win a prize today, plus that best question gift card from each session. So keep those questions coming in. All right, well, let's move it right along, guys, because up next, we are so excited to introduce Darshan Shah, Director of Product Marketing at Gigamon. Darshan, thank you so much for joining us on the EcoCast. I know you have a lot of great info to cover, so I'm going to hand the mic right on over to you.
Hey, thank you so much. Everybody, welcome. Very pleasure to speak with all of you. I'm Darshan Shah, Director of Product Marketing at Gigamon, and I'm going to be talking about improving state, local education, networking, and cloud. And the first thing I'm going to do is, first of all, just tell you a little bit about who is Gigamon, and then we'll go right into the main topics. I'm going to cover state and local government first, then go to higher education, and then I'm going to talk about how Gigamon can help you. I got some really exciting dashboards that I want to show you that can help you right away, and I'll give you some resources that you can use right away to gain some benefits. So in terms of Gigamon, Gigamon is a global leader in the network visibility and analytics space, and basically Gigamon helps companies with gaining visibility regardless of medium, whether it be on-prem, whether it be hybrid, virtual, cloud, what have you. And in terms of the company's profile, as you'll see here, Gigamon has a very high customer satisfaction globally. The products are backed by 75 different patents. They've been around for a long time, so they're very proven. And for this particular audience, I just want to point out that Gigamon solutions are procured by all of the top 10 federal government agencies in the U.S., as well as many state and local and educational institutions. So let's talk about the topic at hand. So as many of you have been experiencing, digital transformation got sharply accelerated by the pandemic, and it continues on. There is added emphasis right now in the area of cybersecurity, and there are also some challenges that have come up related to the migration, and that's going to be basically the theme of the next few slides. So let's talk about state and local government first, and then I'll talk about higher education. So with state and local government, we're observing a few different things, especially, and these will be things that will probably be prevalent for the next year or two. So first of all, cloud migration's happening, but there have been some agencies that are lagging a little bit, and the reasons for that include things like siloed data. There's a shortage, and this is across basically globally across all verticals of skilled cloud people. There's not really a cookie cutter model for the cloud that applies to all agencies. Every agency, you got to look at the requirements separately and then determine what makes sense. And then there's just complexities in general with cloud. So that's one of the big challenges. Now, I have a few other things listed here that we've been observing at Gigamon. So first of all, we're seeing a lot of network upgrades. Typically, those network upgrades are going between like 10 to 40 or sometimes to 100 gigs. So there's some implications related to that that we're going to talk about in the next slide. And then, of course, the big one, which is security related. So, we have seen in the news a lot of incidences of citizen data at risk. In the critical infrastructure world, we're also seeing we are seeing a lot of news in that area as well, and especially in regards to operational technology. Now, operational technology was traditionally designed to be air-gapped, but because of the convergence of IT and OT, there have been attacks that have taken place, and it's possible to breach the IT network through the OT network and other bad things. So this is a very important priority to the point that federal government is funding state and local cybersecurity, including critical infrastructure. Now, let's talk a little bit about the priorities in general for modernizing and securing state and local government. And what I'm listing here are really, these are top level priorities that come up that Gigamon gets brought into. And no surprise, at the very top of the list is that point about security. And Gigamon specifically gets brought in a lot because Gigamon brings complete visibility to all of the data in motion in the IT infrastructure. And you can't secure what you can't see. So the Gigamon solves that problem by making sure that there's visibility to all traffic because we don't want any blind spots. Now, in addition to that, and closely related is when it comes to online services, it's just making sure that those are very secure and also have a high performance. A lot of you have been moving more and more online in terms of your delivery of service. So Gigamon is often used to help in that arena. We talked about critical infrastructure, and so fortifying critical infrastructure, another place that Gigamon helps to eliminate blind spots that are related to operational technology. Another unique way that Gigamon is used almost for exclusively for critical infrastructure is you have to be careful with availability. That's a #1 priority when it comes to operational technology. And so the use of unidirectional tapping is very important so that the OT production traffic never gets poisoned. And those of you that are in that arena will understand this very well. So Gigamon has those kinds of taps. It's a very popular product and capability that Gigamon provides that is very important for especially those kinds of networks. And then I want to just touch on the last point really briefly, which is everybody always has IT priorities that they'd like to pursue, but budget, is the thing that constrains it all. So where Gigamon gets involved and is brought in, it's very popular. We have a case study at the city of Riverside that really highlights this well, where they saved over $1 million by optimizing the traffic going to tools using Gigamon. And this is the same story we see across the board in the government, that when you optimize the traffic to the tools, you start to stop wasting unnecessary tool spend, both in the future and you extend the life of your current tools. Secondly, I talked about network upgrades, which is happening all over the place. And one of the things you have to contend with a network upgrade is, what do you do with the tools? So Gigamon offers port flexibility. And what that means is that even if your network is being upgraded to the next level, your tools, this port flexibility allows you to continue to use your tools that might be running at a lower speed. So, your 10 gig tools, even if your network is going to 40, you can continue to use those with Gigamon, and that can be a very big cost saver. All right, now let's shift gears to higher education. And higher education has many very similar issues, just a couple of nuances that I want to point out to you. So first of all, cloud computing is rapidly just continuing to grow, and it's being driven by e-learning and research. So from that standpoint, performance is very important, and there's also, other implications there that need to be considered with the continued increased use of cloud. Secondly, we're seeing network upgrades also in the higher education area, and so similar, just similar points to what I talked about with state and local government, and then of course the security. But in this case, we're talking about student privacy, we're talking about research, and we're talking about intellectual property. There's been a lot of high-profile ransomware incidences. You've probably read about them in the news with university research, and so this is a very, very high priority. And again, no surprise, federal funding is been happening to bolster higher education cybersecurity, as well as now K through 12. And in terms of what are the big priorities, again, with modernizing and security with higher education, where does Gigamon tend to get involved? Pretty much exactly the same points that I made with state and local government. There's a lot of emphasis on when Gigamon is brought in about the visibility points, especially when you consider that in higher education and in education in general, you're dealing with folks that are running applications, students running applications, all kinds of different applications. You have no idea what kind of security they have on their endpoint. So one of the key points I want to make here is that security in those kind of cases falls back to the network. And that's a very strong point with Gigamon's solution. That's where Gigamon is used, is getting all of that traffic. Sometimes it's unmanaged devices or unmanaged endpoints, and being able to bring visibility to all of that so that it can be properly inspected and monitored. You can see the rest of the points there about just being able to secure student data and research and privacy. I mean, that's a top priority, and then again, being able to extend the life of current tools so that you can get more out of your budget for other high priorities. All right, so let's get more specific now, and I just want to talk about two recent use cases to help you understand this, and then I'm going to show you also as part of this, I'm going to show you a new offering that we have. It's a toolkit, and we actually offer this free to give analysis to customers that qualify. So I'm going to show you some dashboards that will help you to kind of see, what you could be doing to better understand your IT infrastructure traffic and get insights. We're finding this has been extremely compelling to state and local entities and higher education. So let's start first by talking about optimizing network visibility and performance. And this is really important, obviously, for both higher education, state and local, because you're dealing with delivery of online services, and e-learning, for example, performance is very important. So there's three capabilities that often come up that are utilized by Gigamon. So first of all, it's achieving full visibility of the network regardless of medium, and that includes getting common blind spots that are typically places that bad actors like to utilize. So one of those blind spots is encrypted traffic. So malware loves to hide behind encrypted traffic, and encrypted traffic is growing in all of your networks. Number two is east-west traffic. So east-west traffic is often what bad actors use to propagate malware and other bad things across your network very rapidly. And so these are areas that Gigamon has the right kind of solution to get that visibility of those kinds of blind spots. Number two capability is being able to do your traffic from a layer 7 perspective, which is the application layer. So one of the things that we see a lot of organizations like to be able to do is be able to see a listing of all the applications that are running on their network and the bandwidth that it's consuming. This capability also allows you to see rogue traffic much more clearly. So we find that a lot of security folks find this very useful, but it's very helpful from a performance standpoint. And I'm going to have a slide later that's going to really make this point very easy for you to understand. And finally, metadata. So metadata can be generated for network traffic. Gigamon, this is an area that is getting very popular, and metadata can help you with really pinpointing those network and security issues faster, but especially in the security realm, there's a lot of things you can do to bolster your security when you utilize the metadata. And at the same time, there's also things you can do with metadata that will help you sharply reduce costs, like cost to Splunk and other kinds of SIEMs. We're seeing that utilized by the government today. All right, so let me bring some color. That toolkit that I talked about, it's a new offering that we have. Let me show you a dashboard. So this is a dashboard of application traffic, and what you see on here is this shows you a listing of all of the applications that are running in the bandwidth. You'll see kind of the upper side, it even kind of graphically shows you what is most dominant, where the bandwidth is being most used. So you can see that when you can get that kind of a listing of everything, very useful for you to weed out, what is going on the network in terms of applications running, and also what is bogging down your tools and your bandwidth. All right, so now I want to talk about another very interesting use case, and this is identifying expired and non-trusted certificates. So certificates, of course, are essential for validating the identity of hosts and in exchanges, and so a very important area. And Gigamon, I talked about metadata earlier, and I want to talk about a few different ways that metadata is used in this area. So one of the things that becomes a very high overhead activity is just being able to deal with all of the different kinds of certificates. So there's public certificates, private certificates, and then another class is self-signed certificates that developers like to use. And it's not uncommon for there to be just hundreds of those kinds of certificates because developers need to test out whatever software they're creating. And so the validity dates on those certificates, especially self-signed, can sometimes be very short. And it becomes really difficult and challenging to track all of that. Well, when you utilize metadata for these certificates, you can automate that whole process. You can make visualizations very easy so that it's easier to kind of track what is going on with them. And that's really what we're getting at. And at the end of the day, bottom line, this is very useful from a security standpoint, as you'll see in that last column that we have listed there. So I want to show you a dashboard of the toolkit that we talked about earlier, available for you guys to analyze your traffic. And this one, what it shows you here is encrypted traffic, which you'll see there's a shaded blue area across a timeline. Unfortunately, the platform doesn't allow me to point this out to you using my cursor. So hopefully this is clear to you. And it shows the encrypted traffic in proportion to your total traffic. And what you're seeing on this sample is what we typically see with most customers, and that there's a lot of encrypted traffic. And of course, that's useful from a security standpoint because malware, as I made the point earlier, that's where it likes to hide. The donut chart you see, that's that shows you all the different ciphers running in your traffic. And then to the right of that, I know it's a little hard to see, but there's a listing of all of the different certificates. And what we're using behind the scenes to create this dashboard for our traffic discovery toolkit is metadata. So you can see where there's a lot of value when you start to learn how to utilize this metadata for network traffic, and it's an area I recommend all of you get more and more familiar with, because it will make your life easier, it will save costs, and it'll bolster your security. All right, so those are the use cases, and now what I want to do is, I told you that I would tell you how Gigamon can help you, and so let me just start with a quick, very easy to understand diagram here of what Gigamon's all about. So on the left side, you have your IT infrastructure, and on the right side, you have performance and security tools. The Gigamon platform sits between the two, and there's 4 different levels to the Gigamon platform. The first is access, and that means access to all data in motion, regardless of medium, and the goal there is eliminate blind spots. We can then aggregate all of that traffic into the platform, and that third level, transform, that is where you can do we can get a lot of the benefits I talked about with optimizing traffic to tools. So there's actually more than 23 different capabilities that are available in our transform level, and they're things like deduplication, different kinds of filtering. I'm going to show you an example of application filtering. You can do different kinds of slicing, masking, that's useful for student privacy data, and more. And what ultimately the benefit of this is, when you optimize this traffic, you send less irrelevant traffic to the tools, and that right there will extend their life before you have to buy more instances. When you look at the typical cost in a medium-sized agency of what they're buying in tool instances every year as their data is growing, it can get astronomical. So this is a great, easy way to reduce that cost and minimize future spend on what is typically waste, which is irrelevant traffic. So let me put some color to that. I'm going to go back and show you one more screenshot from that toolkit that's available to all of you to see your traffic. And so what this dashboard is showing you is, this shows you the your traffic in the network and kind of how it fluctuates in bandwidth over a timeline at the bottom. The really interesting part is in the middle, where I'm showing about 49 to 50% duplicate traffic. And so that shows you, that's a very typical number, by the way. That's where there's a big application for utilizing deduplication to optimize your traffic. I only have a couple of minutes left. Appreciate moderators if you can keep me on for just a couple minutes more here before we go to questions, because the rest is important. Application filtering, I talked about this earlier. This right here shows you how you can filter out based on application to different tools. So this is a great way, again, to reduce unnecessary costs. Let's just summarize a few things, and I want to give you a couple of next steps that I recommend for you. So Gigamon helps you modernize and secure your organization in terms of performance, running faster, security, which is being more secure, and optimizing, which is optimizing your traffic to tools so you can reduce tool spend. All right, so as a next step, I want to encourage you to try out our free online wizard. And what this will help you see is ways to improve your efficiency, pinpoint security issues faster. And what you'll get when you utilize this, when you use the wizard, it'll only take 3 to 5 minutes of your time. The URL is there. You might want to just copy and paste that URL. Recommend you use it right after this. It'll send you a report. I've sent you a sample report. That's one of the handouts that we've given you. And you'll see in there that it's got all useful insights that like how you can reduce noise so you can, in your network traffic, you can pinpoint security issues faster, how you can achieve, it shows you 5-year cost savings and tool spend. So very useful. Check that out. The second is I talked a lot about how you can get insights about your traffic with that traffic discovery toolkit. If you're interested in that, there's a URL here, go.gigamon.com/neat. NEAT is an acronym for a team that I lead, and we will be happy to have a discussion with you. And if it looks like it makes sense, we'll get you set up with a free traffic analysis. With that, I want to thank you all very much, and happy if there is any time to take any questions.
That was so awesome, Darshan. I appreciate you kind of speeding through those last slides because I know we are a bit short on time, but great content, just an amazing presentation. And we do have some really great questions. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to throw very quickly, I'm just going to go back to this slide here. I'm going to remind you all that URL is clickable because we did have a question already coming in about where to get that URL. So click on it really quickly, open up a new tab. I'm going to put the other one up. Get that one. You have a few seconds here. Go click on the URL. And we did. I wish we had more time to dig into questions, but I'm going to put the poll up very quickly. And if anyone is looking for more information from Gigamon, please do click on that poll. Let us know what information that you would like. This is a fantastic way to reach out directly to the team. Darshan, I'm going to ask you a quick question here, and then we'll keep moving. You had mentioned optimizing traffic. So we have an audience member wondering about the most popular or most effective ways to optimize traffic with state and local organizations. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. The big one is deduplication. And the reason is that deduplication is basically a capability that you can impact all of your different types of tools across your stack, and basically make them all way more efficient, and reduce that, having to buy new instances because they're starting to get filled up. So deduplication would be number one. And then the number two that we're seeing at Gigamon is that application filtering, which is, it's just a lot of our customers are finding it very helpful and beneficial, useful to be able to get a view of their traffic from a layer 7 perspective. So great question. Thank you for that.
And I'm going to sneak in one more, just stretching our time here. What are some of the main uses of metadata for security by the government?
Oh, fantastic question. So one of the big ones is being able to identify and expired certificates, so that's a big one that we see used all over the place. There's also use cases for government related to M2131. So some of you, I know this is more state and local, but the federal government right now has a mandate for M2131, and Zero Trust is the other place that's closely related. So metadata can be used to satisfy the logging requirements that are being mandated and being basically requested by the government that all agencies be able to do this. And that's the reason I was saying that I highly recommend all of you get familiar with how to utilize metadata.
Perfect. Okay.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. There are still some questions coming in. So just want to assure everyone out there that Darshan and the Gigamon team will follow up with you, but we are going to wrap it there. Before you run away, Darshan, other than the URLs that you gave us, is there anything else that somebody should do if they want to get started with Gigamon?
Yeah, I'm going to invite you to contact me if you have any questions, and I'm happy to navigate any of your questions. It's my email is darshan.shaw@gigamon.com, and I'd love to hear from you.
Perfect. And if anyone needs a reminder of that, shoot us a message in that questions tab, and we'll make sure that goes to Darshan, and he and his team will follow up with you. Darshan, again, thank you so much for being here with us today. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Hope everybody has a great rest of the week.
And thanks to everyone who took the time to ask a question or answer that poll today. That is very helpful. I do want to remind you that if you'd like to read more from Gigamon, head on over to that handouts tab. You can check out the Network Tools Efficiency Evaluation Custom Report. Really interesting reading. So go download that, save that for later. But stay with us for now because we're going to keep rolling with these awesome sessions. So up next, I am so excited to welcome Shrija Moharar, Inside Sales Engineer at Rubrik. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Shrija. The platform is all yours.
Thank you so much for having me. Perfect. So I hope everyone is having a wonderful Wednesday so far. I'm here to discuss supporting, improving, and securing education and government IT in the cloud. So starting off with securing your Microsoft 365 data with Rubrik. As you know, Microsoft 365 encapsulates many data sources like SharePoint sites, Exchange, including mailboxes, calendars, and contacts, as well as Microsoft Teams and OneDrive. So M365 is a SaaS solution, but as with many cloud services, the data and information is the responsibility of the customer. So the customer is responsible for protecting that data at the end of the day, and Microsoft's real focus is on providing that infrastructure and availability of these applications. So many people ask, why bother with backup? Well, in fact, Microsoft will tell you right within your services agreement that they recommend backing up your content and data with third-party apps and services as best practice for securing your data, because they know that data loss happens. So, data loss happens no matter where that data lives, whether through accidental deletion or something more malicious like hackers and ransomware, and recovery is the user's responsibility. So the Microsoft 365 protection paradox, as you can see with all these percentages and statistics, increased business critical data has increased drastically over the years, but there's limited last line of defense. 25% of customers and organizations and companies aren't utilizing any backup solutions for their M365 environment, and all of this pertinent information is not backed up. Also, a lot of companies as well are relying on their cloud vendor, which I'll touch on why that can be an issue later on. We provided a solution that can protect your information and ensure that this pertinent data is available. So you may be asking, why does M365 need to be protected? Well, the four key reasons is that accidental deletions happen all the time with users or employees. And then there can also be malicious insiders. So if an employee is terminated, for example, and attempting to delete confidential data before they depart, that can be a major issue and disaster for an organization or company. But the main reason is also malware or ransomware attacks. So M365 has become a top target. Employees unintentionally clicking something they shouldn't have, like phishing attempts, or downloading infected files and accidentally leaking usernames and passwords to sites they thought they could trust but end up not being secure, could raise a major issue for organizations. And then the complexities and gaps in data retention. Microsoft 365 retention policies are difficult to keep up with, let alone manage. And for instance, Exchange Online has a 30-day retention policy after which data will permanently be deleted. For OneDrive, it's around 93 days, and then for deactivated employees, it's only 30 days for their OneDrive account. For SharePoint, again, it's around 93 days, and not only is this complex to manage, but you can't always be sure if your data is recoverable. And any gap in data retention can result in data being permanently lost and unrecoverable, and with the legal requirements, compliance requirements, and access regulations varying between industries and countries, these gaps can result in major compliance violations. So, as you all probably know, Microsoft 365 has seen exponential growth during the COVID pandemic. There's sudden pressure on businesses to go remote and sudden pressure on IT teams to enable their organizations to do so safely and efficiently. So it's no surprise that apps like Microsoft Teams saw 500% growth in daily active users over the course of just 1 year. So you think, new IT landscape with more critical data being stored on remote devices, new data management imperatives, right? But when you look at most organizations that are protecting this data, you see that not many of them are backing it up. In fact, you can see that nearly half the people are relying entirely on their cloud vendor for backup and recovery, and I'll tell you why that is worrying on the next slide. So we have seen instances where Microsoft 365 has suffered ransomware, malicious deletion of files, as well as many incidences where there's inadvertent deletion of business critical data that unfortunately was unrecoverable. So we've seen data that says around 71% of 365 users have experienced an account takeover. So what that is a type of identity theft or fraud where malicious third party gains access to a user account credentials, something of that sort. And then 81% of users have experienced an email breach. So it's very common nowadays. And analysts are also telling us that 74% of Microsoft 365 users have identified the issue and are evaluating the need for third-party data protection. So unfortunately, if your primary use case is backup and recovery, that's not what Microsoft's native tools were built for. So if you're utilizing these native tools, they can be helpful for some compliance use cases, but they're not real backup. They store data directly on the live production environment with no actual backup to recover from. So if something happens to that production environment, the data will be gone. And even if there is a retained file that you can bring up, you're limited to file-by-file restores and have to go through a tedious, 10-step restore process for each file. And then in addition to the cost of the time you're spending to locate this data, restore this data, or navigate the Microsoft Compliance Center where all these tools reside, these tools really aren't free. So depending on what license you have, you may need to upgrade to even get access, and that doesn't cover the storage consumed by retaining this data in the Microsoft 365 environment, and it can end up being 200 times more expensive than any solution that leverages lower cost blob storage. So what does Microsoft actually provide? Well, they have that recycle bin capability, so that's 30 to 90 days of retention dependent on the application between Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, Exchange, etc. And then they also do have a litigation hold capability, so this will preserve data for legal requirements. Users can still make changes and delete items, but unaltered copies will be preserved. And then this retains all those contents and copies, including the deleted items from the original versions of modified items. And lastly, they do also provide retention policies to prevent the permanent deletion of data such as files, documents, or emails, and ensure that that information is stored for a mandated period of time. Next, here's just a slide that you can see. There's a lot of steps you have to go through when utilizing the Microsoft e-discovery capability. Can be tedious and very time-consuming. So what we did here at Rubrik is Microsoft and Rubrik together provide a complete protection of your M365 environment. We actually have a wonderful partnership with Microsoft and are one of their largest customers. So Microsoft will provide that security, compliance, and availability piece, and then Rubrik will provide the recovery capabilities. So actually the Microsoft team collaborated with our engineering team over here at Rubrik to create this solution due to our wonderful partnership with them, and we do have custom abilities and capabilities within our solution that other vendors do not possess. So Rubrik M365 protection. So what Rubrik offers is a 100% SaaS data management solution that's built for backup and recovery. We provide secure offline backups across Exchange Online, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams so that you can ensure that critical data is available in the event of data loss, and whether that's accidental deletions or a more malicious event. And it's really easy to get started. So Microsoft 365 protection is delivered as a service via our Polaris platform. Zero infrastructure is required, and it takes 2 steps to get set up, so you don't have to worry about any upgrades, hardware maintenance, or any refreshes. It takes a few clicks to authorize Rubrik with your Microsoft 365 environment, and you can get set up within minutes. It's also really easy to configure, so you don't need to pass any credentials to us. All you need to do is authorize Rubrik to connect to your Microsoft 365 environment, and we'll establish a secure connection automatically. And to configure SLA policies, aka what we call retention policies, all you need to do is state how often you want things to be backed up, so the frequency of the backup, as well as how long you need to keep your data, so the retention of those backups. And Rubrik will take care of everything else on the back end. So the benefits of Rubrik M365 protection: you can use our SLA policy engine to automate protection at scale for any number of users, and you don't have to spend hours of manual effort trying to restore emails or OneDrive folders or files, etc. With Rubrik, recovery and restore takes 3 easy clicks. So you can also avoid having to restore unnecessary data by searching and recovering the exact files or folders you need, or restore in full to any location of your choice. You can also configure role-based access control to enable other users access for self-service restores as well. And finally, the real Rubrik advantage is that you can do this all seamlessly from the same management console as the rest of your environment. So no need to log into separate applications for monitoring or for your team to learn an additional tool. You can extend the same simplicity for on-prem protection to your Microsoft 365 environment. So Rubrik radically simplifies and speeds up this recovery process, as you can see here. A quick 3-step process. So simply all you have to do is utilize Rubrik's predictive search to locate that email or file that you want to recover, select the file along with any others, and then select the restore target. So just in 3 easy steps, your data is back where it belongs and your team is back to spending time on more strategic projects and pertinent things. So the Rubrik solution provides backup and restore for all M365 applications with integrations capable of restoration at the granular level. So yes, our M365 solution is air-gapped. We have a logically air-gapped solution for our M365 piece. And you do have the capability to restore at the granular level. So let's say you wanted to find a specific file in a folder in your OneDrive. All you have to do is use that predictive search, search the name of that file, and then you can easily recover it to the original user. Another user, if that employee, let's say, left the company, or download it as a zip file. And then we do provide backup and restoration options for all M365 applications, Jack. And then, so we need some setting changes in Teams to enable, no, you do not need to change any of the settings within your Teams application to enable Rubrik implementation. So this will back up any of the chats that multiple users can be a part of, but none of the private messages will be backed up, just because that is a privacy regulation that Microsoft has, so we can't overcome that. But no need to change any of the settings within your Teams app.
That's nice, especially because, yeah, we do have a lot of teams that are on the smaller side.
Yeah.
Okay, and yeah, sorry, we just got a new question in. And oh, you know what? Actually, one of the ones I wanted to see if you had any thoughts on, you know, Patrick had made a comment about the PEBCAC, the problem exists between the keyboard and chair. And I was chatting with a member of your team yesterday, actually, on a tech talk about zero trust security, which I should be on demand shortly. And I highly recommend everyone check out the Rubrik tech talk on zero trust security. And just out of curiosity, I'm wondering if what is the support at Rubrik like in terms of, it sounds like rollout and implementation is pretty simple, and is there any help in terms of training, education, and ways that maybe from a change management perspective, these teams can implement this type of tool?
Yeah, so for our M365 piece specifically, it's very easy to set up and manage, and we can guide you through that process as well. We also do have a free 30-day trial on our website that you can easily sign up for if you want to test out the solution yourself and see it in action. We do have Rubrik University available for any customers if they do have any questions about any of our offerings or how to implement or do any tasks within our interface. And then our support team over here at Rubrik is always available as well. So we actually have a CSAT rating of 98.6%. Our customers are really satisfied with the level of support we can provide. And we're always here to help with any questions or concerns about Rubrik itself, the solution, any workloads, any failed jobs, anything of that sort.
That's huge, especially since, as we chatted about earlier, there's a shortage of people with some of these specific skills. So if the teams in question here are able to rely on that support from Rubrik, that makes a big difference. Deb here is wondering if you could speak a little bit to some of the uniques at Rubrik and what you would say sort of the top top uniques are for your solution.
Yeah, so the main unique differentiator, in my opinion, for our M365 piece is our service health API we're utilizing to ensure that your M365 environment is online and is functioning properly, and it will notify you if there is any sort of outage or if anything is offline. We also do allow for an auto retry mechanism for any failed backups, and then switch between multiple APIs to ensure that your backups are succeeding. We have a wonderful audit and compliance piece that you can easily view any reports from to see if your daily tasks are succeeding, all the backups are healthy and successful, and you don't even have to log into the interface. Let's say you are swamped that day, you have a lot of meetings, you don't have time to check on those backups. You can actually have those reports sent out to your email or your team's email on a daily or weekly basis to ensure that you have all the information you need, but you don't have to spend time logging in. We also do integrate with various different multi-factor authenticators like Duo, Okta, RSA Secure ID, anything that is SAML 2.0 compliant. And then we allow for time-based one-time passcodes natively for any local or AP users to ensure all of the logins to your backup environment are safe and secure. So those are some capabilities, but we have a lot more to highlight too. And if you guys are ever interested, please reach out. I would love to have a great conversation with you.
Those are a lot of really good uniques there. That's a lot of reasons to reach out to Rubrik, and I want to I guess follow up on that. If you sort of had one thing that you would want everyone to walk away from this conversation kind of thinking about or asking themselves, what would that be?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I would say, is your data environment, not even just the M365 piece or your cloud workloads, is it secure? Is there a level of security from ransomware attackers? Are you utilizing the right measures? They're very important things, especially nowadays since ransomware attacks are occurring all the time. And cyber insurance requirements are rising. And that's really where Rubrik steps in and has cyber resiliency at the top of our minds, because there's so many things to implement, so many different solutions, so many components, and we wanted to simplify that process. So I would love everyone to, think about what their security measures are today.
That's a really great point. I think we have this tendency now to just start collecting security tools and solutions without necessarily putting the forethought in, and then we talk about these Frankenstein solutions, and it can get really out of hand really fast. So it's nice to work with a company or like Rubrik that has so many different tools within one that you can kind of consolidate a little bit and not feel so much like you're you're in a Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Well, I hope we did get to cover everything that you wanted to today. If anyone does have any further questions and wants to dig in a bit more into cloud, I highly recommend reaching out. Is there any first step? You've mentioned getting in touch with yourself. What do you suggest is that first move if somebody's interested in getting involved with Rubrik?
Yeah, you guys anyone can check out our website. You can request a meeting, a POC. You can see our products and actions and what we have to offer. And yeah, so you can reach out on LinkedIn to anyone at Rubrik, and we'd be more than happy to help.
Yep, I can attest. You guys have an awesome team. Always a pleasure to chat with you. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Shuja. This has just been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the week.
Well, that was a lot of fun. And the good news is the fun does not stop here, because it is already time for our second prize giveaway. So a reminder that all winners must be in attendance here at the live webinar in order to win one of the prizes. And we will be in touch about claiming your prize after we wrap today. Okay, so our next winner of a $500 Amazon gift card today is Jinwei Lin of Washington. Jinwei Lin of Washington, you have won a $500 Amazon gift card. Congratulations. And don't forget that there are still at least one more chance to win a $500 gift card today, plus that best question gift card from each session. So keep those questions coming in. Remember, we're reviewing them after the fact. So even if we don't read your question out, there's still a chance to win that best question gift card. Okay, and up next, we have another awesome presentation for you in the EcoCast today. I am so excited to introduce you to Larry Goldman, Senior Product Expert at Progress, and Mark Singh, Senior Solutions Engineer at Progress. Larry and Mark, thank you both for joining us today. I know that you have a lot to cover in your presentation, so I will hand the mic on over to you.
All right, thanks, Jess. Yes, I'm Larry Goldman, Senior Product Expert at Progress, and Mark Singh is with me here, our Solutions Engineer. Today's topic is network monitoring and IT solutions for education and government agencies. And that, of course, slots really well in with the overall theme that we have today. And what I want to do today is really to take a look at some of the challenges facing educational institutions and government agencies, and some of the best practices that we've actually been able to determine by watching what makes our customers successful. I think if we keep it at a high enough level and give you some strong best practices, I think that's a win, and it's well worth your time today. We're going to cover two quick use cases that reinforce how these practices come into play, how our product called What's Up Gold can help, and then Mark's going to jump in at the end to answer your questions. So please, as you go along, make sure to submit them. So generally, as these things go, you want to present the product last, but I think it's really important to make mention now of What's Up Gold, because I want you to understand our perspective, where our perspective comes from on this topic. Progress Software offers many different software products, and one of the solutions we provide is a network availability and performance at a glance monitoring product called What's Up Gold. It's been around for a while, and it was originally created by Ipswitch, if you heard of them, which Progress acquired several years ago. What's Up Gold it allows users to avoid downtime because they can monitor their network in detail. Users with a range of technical skills can get alerts on everything that's going on in the network, see exactly what's happening, and then resolve network issues before the end users notice, which is the most important thing. What's Up Gold is highly regarded in the network monitoring industry. In fact, it regularly wins awards against its market competitors. This month, we just earned top honors, ranking #1. We beat 13 rival solutions in Infotech's 2022 Network Monitoring Emotional Footprint Report. And we've got a link here so that you can go to this report as part of the presentation. That's why I mention it. In this, though, which these rankings came from actual customer reviews. It's not paid placement, subjective editors. What's Up Gold ranked #1 for likeliness to recommend, plan to renew, satisfaction that cost is fair relative to value, ease of customization, and its operational dashboard. So, really focus on ease of use, on the network monitoring. And in government and in education, these are things that really resonate with the kinds of users that we have. So the reason we're making this particular presentation is, like I was saying, a lot of our customers come from education and government. We do span all industries, but these have been two areas of extreme focus for us, and it's given us insights into their ongoing challenges, but also how they successfully address those issues. There's so many similarities across the two industries. I'm probably telling you what you know, and we've got a whole list of them here. So if you're attending, you're likely a network engineer or a manager of engineers at an educational institution. That could be primary or secondary school, community college, university, or you're the same role for a state or local government. In either case, you're challenged to support the day-to-day operation across a distributed campus or an office for hundreds or thousands of end users. And you know, what both areas I think have in common is that you're constantly being asked to do more with less, and you're likely looking for a cost-effective way to manage and secure your infrastructure. That's really the whole theme of today's series. So what no one will disagree with is that every year, a reliable, optimized, and well-run infrastructure becomes even more critical to the success of your institution. And yet, you know, look at these issues here. You have to deal with this across the board. There's unknown errors that are causing a slow network. There's a proliferation of virtual machines. There's a bandwidth hogging streaming media, an inability to assess how bandwidth is being used and who is using it. And there's an ever-growing jumble of IT tools and consoles where you can't get a single contextual view of how everything interacts and interrelates. Worse, you could have older, outdated systems and not be able to identify which resources to remove and replace. You know, do you have 5 different Azure servers running right now and you really only need one? How do you find that out? It's a challenge. Finally, in education and government, you're under significant regulations and policies for a variety of reasons, and you're probably being required to prove on a regular basis that you're in compliance with those regulations. So how do most effective organizations deal with all this? Well, let's talk about those best practices. Here's number 1. First of all, know your infrastructure. We all know networks change almost daily. Planned and unplanned changes happen all the time. And we know that networks have a complicated history. It's likely if you're listening to this, you're probably not one of the people in academia or government who were around when your network was first built. There's a lot of pieces, a lot of equipment, and a lot of it's old and kludged together. And then, you know, there's shadow IT, the things you don't even know about that people have gone to do around you. You know, if you can't see it, you can't manage it. And if you don't know your infrastructure, you're never going to be able to fix the problem. You need to know what's running, what's connected, how everything's interdependent, where things are physically too, because if you don't know that, you're just setting yourself up for failure. So the number 1 practice that we have and recommend is to run a layer 2 or 3 discovery and create a network map so you know what you're looking at. And it's not a one-time thing, right? Discoveries are just snapshots that will show you what's going on at the time. You need to run them regularly because things always change. Once you've got a map or a chart or a matrix from your discovery, you have everything in context. And this, you know, this will cover for all the things that you know are happening on an ongoing basis. Additions of students, faculty, or staff members, reallocations to new facilities, virtualization, streaming media apps, data center consolidation products. These are all going to affect your map over time. So once you have it and you start to use it, you can see these changes as you do snapshots over time, and you've established a foundation. So when our customers do this, they generally are surprised by what they didn't know. But now that you do know these things, and that's huge. So number 2 then is now you've got this newfound knowledge. That's where the monitoring comes in. You'll want to monitor your infrastructure for health, availability, and performance of both wired and wireless infrastructure components. And this is including but not limited to network devices, servers, applications, firewalls, routers, virtual resources. You need to know whether or not data is going through smoothly. Are there any hangups? Did switches go down? Did routers go down? Is something slowing down? You know, can we look at the actual bandwidth and see where most of it's going? If you can figure out what's going on, you can usually head off issues before they start impacting those end users, whether they're students, scientists, office workers, or security staff. And it has to be vendor agnostic. If you're just looking at the Cisco operating tools, they're not going to give you going to necessarily give you a level of insight into the Dell storage devices or the Meraki wireless access point system. To have that granular context is critical because it heads off the inevitable finger pointing that can occur. It shows you where the actual issues are, and it helps you to stop the problem quickly before it starts impacting the end users. Our customers also tell us how important it is to have a single tool. They come to us with a fairly complex IT systems that aren't able to talk to each other. And there's research that shows that the more tools a sysadmin has or a network administrator has at their disposal, or that they're required to use for their job, the worse their mean time to repair. So now we've got the infrastructure and the ability to monitor across devices from a single tool. Performance management is important. But in a networked world, wireless and wired connections are just as important. As organizations and institutions begin to digitize, there's even more of an emphasis on ensuring that your wireless and wired connectivity doesn't fail. Understanding which users, applications, and protocols are being bandwidth hogs is critical. Streaming and non-work related activities obviously put a strain on your resources and can slow down the network. Now, having said that, I would point out that education may be unique, and there's often a very good use for video and bandwidth. In a government setting, you can establish policies like, okay, no one can download from Netflix or YouTube, and that's fine. But there are cases in education, like an educational film or a documentary being shown in the classroom, that that are important, and that's something you need to monitor and you need to plan for, as opposed to, say, there's someone who's watching the latest Marvel movie on their laptop when they have lunch. You need to make sure you can properly measure bandwidth usage, how it's being allocated, and how people are using it. Alerts can truly shine in this situation. You want to be able to set, say, a threshold alert to know how much bandwidth is being used and when that bandwidth starts to get out of control, so you can see what's going on. Maybe that alert turns into the phone call to the guy who's watching the Marvel movie to tell him to watch it at home instead. But it's those alerts are critical. I know that part of this, by the way, I know that part of this series is about security, so I wanted to address that here. Generally, network monitoring solutions are not really what we think of as security tools, but they do get close because they can allow you to detect quickly when things are going wrong, like a denial of service attack that's causing the bandwidth to spike. If you're seeing bandwidth usage coming out of areas that are not at all normal, the alert tells you it's coming from somewhere, or you can just see the spike itself on the alert. This can give you the early warning about a possible intrusion. You are, in fact, protecting your network when you detect unauthorized usage before it impacts all your bandwidth. So I mentioned alerts, and alerts are really just a start. The best practices here, have IT engineers that take themselves out of the equation by doing automation. The majority of network outages and performance issues happen because something wasn't configured properly. And sometimes it's human error, and sometimes it was just never set up properly in the first place. Manually managing and maintaining hundreds, if not thousands, of individual devices can be a burden and extremely difficult to track. Even identifying what's changed on a network, when, where, and by whom, can be hard without a proper IT solution in place. Being able to react to issues like device failure or misconfiguration is a vital component of the work that you are doing. So if you can automate configurations, you can not only keep the entire network working smoothly, but you can also maintain compliance with the regulations that impact how the systems are configured. Maybe you want port 8080 blocked on every single device. If your monitoring tool can automatically apply configurations, not only is that human error removed, but it can also help if an intrusion occurs. When someone gets into your network, often the first thing they'll do is they'll gain access to something and change a local configuration to make it easier to gain future access and cause more harm. You can get alerted when that happens, and that's something you can monitor and then have the device automatically revert to an established configuration. Pretty cool. The same thing applies to a non-malicious configuration change that you want to correct. And these are automated. Again, best practice 4 is taking yourself out of the equation. These alerts we've been talking about are a key part of the monitoring for education and government. When something goes wrong, you want to know about it so you can investigate further with a deep level of visibility and observability. So consolidating and standardizing those alerts and notifications in a single center is a critical best practice for improved efficiency. As your network scales, you want to avoid overload. The last thing you want, say, is an alert storm. You can actually set up alerts with monitoring tools so that when something goes down, it'll let you know automatically, and it will ignore any alerts coming from anything downstream because they're no longer connected. Similarly, if you're seeing a bunch of things go down and they're all in the same geographic region, well, maybe check that there's a power outage in the region, or it's not just one individual item. Information like that goes a long way towards figuring out what the problem is and how to resolve it. And when you've got everything coming into one spot, it makes it a lot easier for you to not only understand that information, but also make it available to one or more of your stakeholders in the manners they want to receive this. So this could be through the web, a text alert, email, or tools like Slack and Teams. So you're probably wondering why we haven't mentioned reporting yet. And that's because it's our special surprise, best practice number 6, because you got to have reporting. And we've talked about automating configuration. We've talked about automating alerts, and the same goes for automating reporting. It's time saving, it's energy saving, and it will save you from quite a lot of grief. Everything needs to be reported generally in government and in academia as well. For security and better visibility, the more you can share your information, the more you can keep everyone safe and keep everyone aware of what's going on with the network, and really head off a lot of the issues that may come from those people that don't feel like they understand how things are going. Reporting doesn't get that much attention, but it is surprisingly important. And it can make a giant difference. You can head off, say, ad hoc data and status requests, saving a ton of your own time because you've provided automated reports to people who need them. Let's say you've got someone in accounting who simply wants to know about the usage versus the spend of cloud services. Well, you can have your system automatically run a report every morning and send an email report directly to their inbox. So that's the power of communication. They might ignore it, but then again, they might look at it every day. Many of these kinds of reports and performance monitoring dashboards as well come out of the box with the monitoring tool, and they can get pretty granular, which can help resolve compliance issues and asset inventory requirements. We haven't talked about that yet, but this form of regular reporting can actually help prove that you're actually in compliance with specific regulations. Asset inventory is critical in education and government because of the tremendous financial pressure you're feeling to do more with less with aging networks. When you can create a complete list of every single asset in your network, which is what this monitoring tools can do, you can do things. You can find out things like how old are they, whether or not some of them have been patched, or whether they need patching, what operating systems are they running, and even their form factor. You can help to drive priorities and buying decisions to improve security and network performance through this kind of reporting. We've talked about the 6 practices. Let's talk about 2 examples. The first one is the city of Pleasanton. And if you don't know where Pleasanton is, it's located in California in the East Bay region of the Bay Area. From the city hall to the police department to the fire department, Pleasanton's IT team plays a vital role, as you would expect, in ensuring that the critical functions of the city operate smoothly and without interruption. Now, they wanted to monitor the network for security threats specifically, but they had a log management tool that made it very frustrating and a highly manual process. So what they needed was a monitoring software that had embedded log management capabilities. They needed it all in one place. And that's what WhatsUp Gold, the tool I mentioned initially, was able to do for them. So again, we talked about best practices: mapping, discover, monitoring, consolidated alerts, being able to search and track trends, be able to filter things. They could now do this with their syslogs and their window logs all in a single place in a single network map. And so they could uncover hidden network problems. They could respond to problems faster because they had integrated alert notifications, and overall increase the transparency of their network. So that's an education example. Here is that's a government example. Here's an education example for the Danville Area School District. It's in Pennsylvania, and they serve more than 2,500 students, teachers, and administrators. And they really, with that large of a user base, they have to have visibility into the entire network, and it has to be stable. And that includes, it's interesting, all their students are using Chromebooks. So you've got a lot of usage on that network. You may see this coming, but of course, we're going to talk about COVID-19 and the health crisis. It hit them. And so remote learning and then hybrid learning were the new priorities. And this included rolling out comprehensive streaming setup, including OBS software and Google Meet. And they also created unique document sharing workarounds for their students and teachers. So there was a lot going on, and they needed it to be stable, and they needed to be able to monitor it. And so they turned to a tool like WhatsUp Gold to actively monitor nearly 100 devices with at-a-glance network visibility and these real-time alerts we talked to. And those were sent straight to their phones. That's how they preferred to get them. The IT team is still able to fix errors and identify network usage anomalies before they're noticed by the students, before they interrupt classes, before they interrupt the important school meetings and other things that were going on. So really, again, following those best practices by consolidation, by using the alerts, by really having that discovery so that they understand exactly what technology and devices they have. So this takes us back then to WhatsUp Gold. And it supports all of those 6 best practices. And you can monitor not only these logos to the right and see their impact, but obviously the things on the left, the network devices, the systems, the servers, the workstations, hardware performance indicators, virtual resources, and wireless infrastructure. You can monitor all your systems and the servers, even right down to the workstation, to determine things like processor utilization, memory storage, when do you need new hard drives, what isn't being used that maybe you could decommission, and various hardware performance indicators like, are the fans overheating on this particular server? For virtual machines, what you can find out, like what's the CPU usage? Where are those virtual machines? What interfaces are they using? And if this is a machine setup, but they never took it down and it's using 80% of your bandwidth, you can see that. For wireless, it's monitoring and being alerted on issues like, is your signal strength okay? Is everyone able to get on board? Is everything working? That's the power of WhatsUp Gold. So now we have time for some questions. I see a number have come through. I should first mention we do have a full-featured 14-day trial of WhatsUp Gold, or you can go to whatsupgold.com and you can register and play around with a live online demo version of this software as well. So I've said my part, and with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Mark, to answer the questions that have come in.
Very good. Thank you, Larry.
Yeah, that was awesome. What a great presentation. I was glad that the system mutes me when I'm off screen because I was laughing at all your memes. Those were so entertaining.
Oh yeah. Thanks, Jess. It's true though. They're true. It's true.
They are very true. Yes. Yeah. The bandwidth one really got me. No one can hog the bandwidth if they're not on the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Oh God. Well, yeah, I think we've got some great questions coming in. So if you guys are ready, Larry and Mark, I think we're kicking to you for the questions. Ready to dive in?
Absolutely.
Amazing. Okay. Well, we got a lot of good questions about WhatsUp Gold. So let's start with that. How does WhatsUp Gold get information from devices? Is there an agent?
No, so WhatsUp Gold is completely agentless. So it relies on network protocols like SNMP, TCP/IP, WMI connections for Windows monitoring to query and monitor devices for status and performance.
Perfect. Nice and easy. Well, let's talk about the devices. So how are devices licensed in WhatsUp Gold?
Very simply, one device is one license points. What we use for licensing is a point system. And so let's say you order 100 license or 250 license, so they come in tiers. When you scan and monitor a device, it doesn't matter if it's a Windows server, a Linux system, a switch, router, wireless controller, each of those equal 1 point. So we're not licensing by the monitor. So on a switch with, let's say, 200 ports, you can monitor all 200 ports and it won't affect the license at all, because it's the device itself that's licensed, not the monitors on the device.
Yeah, that helps keep things kind of simple, and for allows scalability really well too.
Right.
So we were laughing earlier about internet. Does WhatsUp Gold require internet access in order to run?
No, not at all. WhatsUp Gold can run in an isolated, airtight environment. It does not require the internet to function, so you could have it installed behind a firewall or DMZ where there aren't any internet access, and it will monitor whatever resources you have there locally.
Perfect. Okay, well, we do still have a few more questions, and honestly, I wish we could keep going. We're just running a bit short on time, so we'll have to wrap it up there. I do want to remind everyone in the audience that if you didn't get an answer in our live Q&A, we will make sure that those questions get passed on to Progress, so you will hear back from the team and you'll get some answers there. Before you guys leave us, Larry and Mark, if somebody's ready to jump in with Progress, we've got this link up on the screen here, but is that the best way to get started? How do you recommend jumping in?
Yeah, going out to the website, and that's the best way right there. You can not only try out the product, you can even see an online copy of an online demo, as well as reach out to us, and our team will reach back out to you. So, but first steps, go to whatsupgold.com.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. And, I know in education and government, you guys are pretty cost conscious out there. And that is one of the benefits of WhatsUp Gold is it's very good for the value for what you pay. And, and we're always glad to cut through the clutter and answer the questions. If you want to reach out and contact someone and talk for just a few minutes and say, I just need to know these things. That's why we're here. Go to the website and feel free to reach out as well, if that makes it a quicker way to get your questions answered.
I love that. Yeah, you're right. Sometimes you just want someone to just answer this question.
Exactly.
Well, that's perfect. Well, again, a big thank you to both Larry and Mark for being here to chat with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
All right, and if you are looking for more reading right away from Progress, head on over to that Handouts tab. You can actually register to download the Infotech Network Monitoring Scorecard. This is a really cool feature, really cool report, so please do go check that out. Sign up to get that scorecard right now, or open the tab and come back to it later, because we've still got lots more sessions to get to. All right, well, a big thank you to everyone who asked questions. I'll remind you again that you will be hearing from the Progress Software team. I know these sessions and the Q&A sessions tend to go by very quickly, so please do know that you will get answers back. And in the meantime, we will keep moving along with this EcoCast, because up next, we are so excited to introduce the awesome Chris Fry, Senior Technical Account Manager at Synology. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. I know that you have some great info for us today, so I'm going to hand the platform on over to you.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this presentation today. My name is Chris Fry, and I'm a Senior Technical Account Manager here at Synology. And today I'm going to talk about preparing for cyber attacks, ransomware, and other disasters. I'll show you a quick demo on how to set up a backup strategy using Synology solutions. So in case you're not familiar with Synology, we are primarily a network-attached storage company. We provide all the tools necessary for data storage, backup and recovery, as well as several other functionalities. And when you purchase Synology, you get the hardware and the software needed to back up and store all your data, including Microsoft 365, at no additional cost. So before we dive in, I just want to go over a few headlines that I've seen recently. I'll just read through these really quickly. Government agencies face continued disruption from cyber attacks. State halted passport services after 3,000 workstations were infected with ransomware. Attack in New Jersey prevented local authorities from accessing records. These are just a few examples of things that have happened and will continue to happen in the future. And this is why it is critical to build a backup and recovery solution for your organization. So when putting together a backup strategy, the first thing that you need to determine are what are the assets that need to be protected. So these will include things like computers, servers, virtual machines, cloud services, and other devices. So let me give you an example. Let's take a look at an organization that benefited from implementing a Synology backup strategy. Alabama Cancer Care is an oncology and hematology practice with 15 locations spread across Alabama. They needed a HIPAA-compliant solution to back up the core infrastructure of their practice, which included 250 active employees with Microsoft 365 accounts, 40 virtual machines that were running electronic medical record applications, and 5 PCs that they used for treatment. So the solution that they went with is one of our rack mount units, the RS3621 RPXS. It's a 12-bay unit with redundant power. And the software solution for this is our Active Backup Suite. This software centralizes backup tasks for VMware, Hyper-V, Windows endpoints, Microsoft 365, and Google Workspace, all to a Synology NAS. But let me go ahead and show you exactly how this works. So here we are in our NAS. We're taking a look at our operating system, DSM or Disk Station Management. So the package that you would use for backing up your endpoints, such as your PCs, physical servers, and virtual machines, will be Active Backup for Business. And then to back up your Microsoft 365 data, you would use Active Backup for Microsoft 365. And these are both part of the Active Backup Suite. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Active Backup for Business and open this up. And you'll see the dashboard here. First of all, it tells you the protected devices that you have set up. And then you can see the backup calendar, ongoing activities, last backup time, storage status, logs, and transmission trends as well. Over to the left here, you'll see the different devices that you can create a task for. I'm going to go down to virtual machine, and once that populates, you'll see on the top there we have the two different hosts, VMware and Hyper-V, and you'll see that we have a bunch of VMs that are already attached to this backup service. So if you see a green check mark next to the, or on the icon there, that means that we already have a task created and it's already created at least one task. So I'm going to go ahead for this example and click on Dave R Demo. And let me just show you, if you're going to set up a new task, you go to Create a Task, click on that, and it'll pull up and you'll see all the different VMs under that host. And you can choose the ones you want to create the task for. So we're going to just choose this one and hit Next. In the next page, you choose where the destination for those backups. So when you install Active Backup for Business, it automatically creates a folder, a shared folder. So we're going to use that. And then on the next page, it'll show you have the option of compressing or encrypting at destination. We already have it set up for no, so I'm going to leave it there. And then you have some other settings here that you can choose. And then on the next page, it's going to just tell you that the services on virtual machines are successful. So we can see that everything's good there. And then here is where you schedule the backup tasks. So you have the option of just doing a manual backup, or you can click on Schedule Backup and you can run the tasks either daily or weekly or up to every hour actually. You can choose exactly what days that you want to run the tasks. right here. And then you can choose the start time. So if you're only going to do it once a day, you can do that during the evening if you want. On the next tab, this is where you select your retention policy. So go ahead and click Enable Retention Policy, and you have three options here. You can decide to keep X amount of versions, or you can keep all versions for X amount of days. Or if you go to the Advanced Retention Policy, it's very granular. You can set up a customized retention policy. And then the next page, this is where you give permissions to who you want to be able to restore these backups. So you can do this at the local user level, local groups, domain users, or domain groups. And then you'll receive the task summary page. Just make sure everything is correct, and then you go ahead and hit done, and it'll start that task. So I'm going to go ahead and X out of that. And that is how you set up a task for backing up virtual machines. So for backing up your Microsoft 365 data, you will use the Active Backup for Microsoft 365 software. So you'll see it right here. Go ahead and click on that, and I will open that up. And here you'll see the dashboard. You can see all the different protected devices, the backup summary. Again, if the circle is green, everything went well. If there's an orange diamond, that means that you can click on it and see what the issue was and get that resolved. You can also see the activities, the log, the service usage, the user usage, and the transferred size. Let's go over to the task list, and you'll see here that we have a backup task that's actually in process right now. So if you wanted to create a new task, you go to Create Task and create a new backup task. And then here you register an application. So if you click on this link right here, you'll see an awesome tutorial that we put together that tells you how to register an Azure AD application for active backup for Microsoft 365. So that'll walk you through logging into your account and allowing us access to that data to back it up. So that's pretty simple. Now let's go ahead and I'm going to show you when you're going through creating the task. I'll show you what different settings you have. So I'm going to go into this current task that we have set up and hit Edit, and you'll see from here you have the general information. You can enable the active backup for Microsoft 365 portal, which allows individual users to be able to go in and restore their data under their account. So if somebody accidentally deletes, let's say, an email or document, they can go back to a previous version of the backup and restore that on their own without getting the IT team involved. Under user, this is where you choose which users that you want to back up and which different services. So if you wanted to back up the mail for all of the users, you just click on that box right there, or you can select that individually, and you can see you can back up Drive, Mail, Archive Mail, Contacts, and Calendar. You can also schedule backup tasks based off the groups. So you can do Microsoft 365 groups and some other options there as well. You can also go to the Site tab here and choose what different sites you want to back up. And then the Auto Discovery Service, this is a great tool where you can set up the backup services or services you want to get backed up and when you add new users to the Microsoft 365 account. So anytime you have a new employee and you add them to your Microsoft 365 account, these settings will automatically be applied to them. And then the last tab here is the policies. So your backup policy, you can do a continuous backup, which means anytime there is a change that is created, it is going to run that backup task within a couple minutes. or you can do just a manual backup, or you can do a scheduled backup where you click on this and you can set a schedule to run the backup either daily or pick the particular days, and then also the runtime and that information as well. And then your retention policy, you can preserve all the versions or choose the number of days that you want to keep each version. So that is how you set up a backup task for Microsoft 365. So another thing to consider when putting together a backup strategy is what are your recovery options? So this chart here shows you all the different options with all the different assets. With Windows PCs, you can do a full system restore, or you can do a file level restore, or you have the option of using the self-service portal, which allows an individual user to go in and restore a previous version of a document or a file that might have been accidentally deleted or corrupted. With Windows servers, you have all the options. So you can do those three, or you can do an instant restore to a virtual machine host. You can also do a cross-platform recovery, so from one virtual machine host to another. And you have the option of the instant restore to Synology Virtual Machine Manager, which I'll go over in a second. And then we also have the option of backing up at the file server level, which allows you to do file level restores. So one of the unique components of this is the option to instantly restore your data directly on the NAS using our built-in hypervisor, Virtual Machine Manager. Let me walk through how that works. So I'll demo this in a second, but as an example, Alabama Cancer Care is backing up their PCs, servers, and virtual machines to their primary NAS. Let's say one of the doctors has a PC with critical information on it and it suddenly crashes. With the Virtual Machine Manager, they can quickly run the PC as a virtual machine and be up and running within minutes. Let me demo how that works. So let's go ahead and go to the left here, and you'll see there's a different tab for each device, and then also tabs for storage, restore status, activities, and settings. So I'm going to go ahead and click on physical server, and this is my PC, which is a Windows device that I'm currently backing up. And let's say that somehow I accidentally spilled coffee all over my PC and it is now destroyed, but I need to access that PC. So I'm going to restore a virtual image of this PC so I can log into it virtually. So what I'm going to do is choose the device and go to restore, and then from here I can choose the version that I want to roll back to and restore. So for this example, I'm just going to choose the last version, click next, and then this is the where I get a chance to select the restore platform. So I can restore it to VMware, I can restore it to Hyper-V, or in this example I'm going to do an instant restore to Synology Virtual Machine Manager, which is our own hypervisor that's installed on the NAS. So go ahead and click next here, and then in the next window it's going to ask me which volume I want that virtual machine to live on, and on this unit it's a 718 plus, so it only has one volume, and I'm going to go ahead and click next. And then this is where I choose the resources to be allocated to that virtual machine. So since this is small and this is just an example, I'm just going to choose one CPU, 1 gig of memory, and then I'm also going to give it a name. So we're just going to call this test. Hit next. And then here you'll see the storage that is being restored. So on this PC I have my hard disk, but I also have a LUN set up, so it says there's 2 disks. Click next, and then the configure the network setting, I'm going to leave it as a default, and then the other settings I'm going to leave these as the default as well. And then here I can assign power management permissions. So this gives users permissions to power on and power off the virtual machine. So in this example, I'm just going to give myself permissions, and then you'll see the summary page. Everything looks good, so I'll go ahead and hit done. And now it's going to automatically switch over to Virtual Machine Manager, and then you can see that that virtual machine is being imported onto the NAS. So this is going to take a few minutes because it's a small machine with not a lot of power. So once that is done though, you can go ahead and power on the machine, and that's what this top virtual machine is doing right now. It's running, and then I can easily just connect to that, and it's going to take me right to the login page of that device. So it's extremely simple. All right, so now another thing I want to show you with Active Backup for Business, well, that's still importing, is I'm going to go to the Active Backup for Business portal. So what this does, this allows individual users to go back to previous versions of their files and restore at either the file or the folder level. So let's say I want to go back and find a document that was accidentally deleted from my computer. You'll see at the bottom here all the different versions that have been kept. So I'm going to go back all the way to this one here, which was on April 8th, and I'm going to click on my hard drive here and go to Users and Chris Fry, that's me, and go into my Documents. And there was a case study template that or a diagram that I lost for investor tools, so I can choose it right here, and then from here I have the option of double clicking or downloading it onto my PC, or I can just hit restore and restore that directly back into that folder. So just to reiterate, everything that I've shown you so far is done with Synology Active Backup Suite, which is included when you purchase the NAS at no additional cost. So an example of how much money you can save, we have another client of ours, Alan, the IT manager at Corin, that says, Active Backup not only keeps 2,400 inboxes safe, but also saved us over $60,000 annually. All right, so back to Alabama Cancer Care. Now that they have all their endpoint assets backed up to their primary NAS, they want to make sure they have an extra copy off-site. So they are backing up all their data to a secondary location. Now the software that they use for this is called Hyper Backup. Hyper Backup allows you to back up select folders, system settings, and software packages to a wide range of destinations while saving space with compression and deduplication. In a second here, I'll show you all the destination options, but in the Alabama Cancer Care example, they are backing up their NAS to Synology C2 Storage, which is our cloud storage solution with data centers in the US, Germany, and Taiwan. Now, let me show you exactly what that looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the Hyper Backup package and open that up. And when it opens up, you'll see a list on the left here of all the different tasks that we already have set up. To create a new task, you just go to the plus button up here on the top, and you can do a data backup task or a LUN backup task. So we'll do a data backup task. And once you click on that, you'll see all the different destination options. So you can use Hyper Backup to back up that data to Synology C2 Storage, which is our cloud service, or you can back it up to a remote NAS device at a different location. You also have some file server options, and then you can see all the other third-party cloud services that we are compatible with. So I'll go ahead and close that, and I'm just going to go ahead and choose a task that we have currently running, our demo test here, and I'm going to go ahead and click Edit so you can see all the different settings that you can set when you're setting up this backup task. The first one is the folders, so you can choose any shared folders on the NAS that you want to back up. So for this, we'll just use we'll choose the demo-1 folder. The next thing is you go to Applications, and this is where you can choose the different applications that are on the NAS, the different packages, and on the right here, it tells you exactly what is going to be backed up from that package. In the settings tab, you can check, there's a variety of different settings. You can get a task notification, a file change detail log, and bandwidth limitation. And then on the next tab is where you schedule the backup tasks. So with the hyper backup, you can run the backup tasks again any days that you want to. And then you can schedule the first time run and the frequency, the last time run. You can also schedule a backup integrity check as well. And then the rotation here is your retention policy, where you can choose to enable backup rotation from the earliest versions of Smart Recycle, which it gives you a brief description of what that is right there. Or you can do a customized retention policy, which you click on that and you can set that up as well. And then on the last tab, it's going to show you what the backup target is. So with this task that we have running, it is backing up to a C2 review account in Synology C2 storage. So that is how you set up a task for hyper backup. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. And reach out in the future if you need anything.
Oh man, thank you, Chris, for joining us today. It's such an interesting presentation, demo, case studies, everything. It had it all. I can see that we already have a lot of questions coming in for you, Chris, and I wish we could dig in all of them, but we are just running a bit short on time as we approach the end of our EcoCast today. So I do want to assure everyone that asked a question that you will be hearing from Synology and Chris, so they will follow up with you. I have also put that poll up on our screen again. I'll remind you again, this is the best way to reach out directly to the Synology team, let them know what you would like to know, what more information you would like from Synology. If you loved the presentation that we just saw, and I know you all did, there's a slide deck for you in the handout section under the Synology link, so go check that out, download that, save that, share that, enjoy that later. And I'm just giving you all another moment to answer the poll here before we kind of move on. So quick. If you were stepping away from your laptop to go grab a coffee, now's the time to come back. And thank you to everyone who sent in a question and answered that poll. Well, I have to say, folks, it always comes up a little bit faster than I think it will, but we have actually reached our final session in the EcoCast today. So up next, I am so excited to introduce Tina Thorstensen. Tina is Vice President, Industry Business Unit and Executive Strategist, Public Sector at CrowdStrike. Quite the title, Tina. Thank you so much for joining us today to wrap up this EcoCast. I know you have a ton of exciting info to cover, so I'm going to hand the mic on over to you.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Well, nothing like rounding out the day, right? So for the next few minutes, we're going to discuss cybersecurity approaches and really how to defend organizations at scale through innovative technology. So we're going to fly through a lot of content here. As we get started, just by way of background, it's a pleasure to be with you today. As I was introduced, you heard I'm an executive strategist. By way of background, I've spent 30 years running IT and security, both in operational and in a program setting across transportation, university, government, and now tech. Before joining the CrowdStrike team, I was a Deputy CIO and Chief Information Security Officer at ASU. So as we get started today, I wanted to talk about the countless hours I spend working with security teams and the themes that I hear over and over again. And these are the three. Attack sophistication, we continue to see a growth there, no signs of letting up. Even the average sort of run-of-the-mill attackers have nation-state capabilities at their disposal today. So the point there really is that organizations that rely on legacy signature-based or malware-centric security strategies really need to start rethinking their approach. So if you're one of those people today, I've got a lot of content for you. The second is siloed solutions, so balancing operational excellence and innovation initiatives as organizations around the globe becoming more distributed as they adopt cloud initiatives, manage mobile workforces, grow the number of tech solutions in their environment, as well as the number of connected devices. And all of this expands the attack surface and really makes things a lot more complicated. There are studies that say that the average size security organization has 45 security-related tools. I found, and many of my colleagues at CrowdStrike also found, that I was running more like 60. So the breadth and depth of all of the security tech is really has really grown. And then the third challenge that we really see is skills shortage, right? The increasing demand for people in the cybersecurity space overall, and the reality is even in the best situations with the most latest, greatest tech, still requires skilled people to operate them. So the good news there is modern security solutions exist, like CrowdStrike, and really puts us, tips the scales in favor when we think of all of us as defenders. CrowdStrike, we've been paying attention to the needs of our customers and have this new innovative approach that we'll share quite a bit about today. When we talk about the threat environment, the attack complexity, really continues to grow. And the main thing I wanted to mention here is that you all have heard about zero trust efforts, and all of those efforts require greater visibility on the endpoints where processes are actually running. Yes, on all of your endpoints where all of your processes are running, whether that servers in the cloud, in your data center, laptops, desktops, mobile devices, tablets walking around. Endpoint security is critical, but it can be hard or almost impossible without the right tools. So the point in this slide is really to share that the adversary industry has really grown, moving away from the signature types of based approaches in the past, malware approaches. We're still seeing malware, but to a lesser extent, and moving more to hands-on keyboard attacks that really require proactive threat hunters. So when we get to solution complexity, that was the second piece I mentioned a moment ago. In short, systems are costly to deploy, difficult to maintain. A poor user experience frequently shows up, and honestly, a lot of the legacy tech really isn't very effective. So that complicates things tremendously. And then lastly, I wanted to talk just a little bit about the workforce, right? And you see this slide with all kinds of articles in it. But what we found is that when CrowdStrike joins forces with customers when they're mid-breach, they tell us things like, "Thanks for helping us get our weekends back." In the wake of announcements like you're seeing on this page, everything from Sunburst, Colonial Pipeline, and so many others, at the root of those, many of these issues include staff credentials, employee credentials, things that are leveraging a software flaw or vulnerability to gain a foothold in the environment. So the people component really is super important to train our people to make sure they're strengthening their passwords, that we're allowing them multi-factor authentication options, and really that we're taking a real close look at how to manage the identities in our environments. All right, so let's talk a moment about the power of the security cloud. This is CrowdStrike's cloud. We collect telemetry from tens of millions of systems across the globe. We manage 170 plus different adversaries that we really take an adversary first approach. We build all of our capabilities around the fact that there are adversaries working to disrupt each one of our organizations. We see more than 1 trillion events a day, and this one's staggering. 135 million plus indicators of attack decisions are made every minute in our security cloud. So the point here is that you really can't do it alone. You need next generation tech, and then you need the people to help you respond to the specifics within your organization. And lastly, all of the data that we just shared with you, last year alone, we got out in front of 75,000 breaches that were in the beginning, in the early stages, because of the approach that CrowdStrike takes to protect our customers. So we're going to take a moment and dive into criminal extortion. Then we're going to get into recommendations around what to do about these adversaries. But I wanted to make sure that we're all level set here in exactly what CrowdStrike means by criminal extortion. And what I would tell you is this. This is where adversaries basically, levy calculated threats to incent payments, right? They're trying to get money. At the end of the day, that's what they're after. So they do this through ransomware techniques, data extortion, and then the ability to disrupt each one of our organizations. And when we talk about e-crime, there are nation-state actors and e-crime adversaries, and what we've seen is the growth and dramatic reduction in time it takes e-crime actors to not only gain a foothold in our environment, but to break out from there. And what CrowdStrike saw last year is that it takes the average e-crime adversary about an hour and a half. And only a few years back, you can see 2018, at that point we were close to 10 hours. So it's important to be able to respond fast. And your technology can help, but it also takes people. So if we look at overarching trends, 2020, ransom dataware leaks, data extortion, e-crime, healthcare, and pandemic-related things. And then as we come into this last year, we saw solar winds and stellar particle, the proliferation of cloud environments, and some changes in the way ransomware, way our adversaries are using ransomware, and then where we are vulnerable to exploitation. So that's really where we've seen things go from a CrowdStrike perspective. Again, canvassing, lots, comparing data across lots and lots of organizations. Let's talk just a moment about data leaks. I mentioned it a moment ago, and the chart that's about to come up here, as soon as the system catches up, you'll see that in short, it doesn't matter what sector you're in. The red is showing you this past year, and the blue is showing you the prior year. What we're seeing is data leaks are on the rise, and it's really one of the main trends we've seen in the past year when it comes to e-crime and also the related ransomware. All right, so I love charts that you can look at a glance and see what we're up against. So this is the trend when we talk about the state of our adversary, and really the approach we have here is what we've got is that we've got a growing nation state set of adversary activity, growing e-crime activity, and then also this unattributed slice is also growing. And part of the reason for that is that it's getting harder and harder to tell who's who. We're seeing them work together, which I'm going to share a little bit about here on this next slide. You can see the criminal ecosystem and how this plays out. And if you blow your screen up really, really large, you'll see all these different pieces. But the main points I wanted to make on this are there are services like access brokers and ransomware creators, those that distribute and monetize and really arm this criminal ecosystem. And they work together and in a way where each one of them knows they do it really well. And in the short, they're out for monetization. How can they affect an organization to the extent that they can extract money from us? All right, so next up here, talk a little bit about the way this criminal extortion threat works. And there's basically three components that I'm going to dive into here: initial access, the exploitation and post-exploitation, and then the objective execution. So first off, we're going to talk about initial access. And with the initial access, what we're seeing in these techniques is, again, an identity focus, which will show up here in full color in just a moment. Identity exploitation and access brokers is where we're seeing a lot of trends recently. And the reason this is important is that this is how organizations gain a foothold inside each one of your organizations or companies. All right, so next up, we're going to spend just a moment and talk about the MITRE ATT&CK framework and how that really has shown that initial access and this identity component is so important. You'll see all the red across the top left is all about using valid credentials. So what CrowdStrike is seeing more and more is that it's so important not only to protect workloads, which we've done for more than a decade, but also work on protecting identities, and doing that in the framing of the zero trust construct so that we can get out in front of the adversary and stay one step ahead. And it isn't just us, it's also Forrester, Verizon, and lots of different reports showing that 80% of modern breaches have a connection to identity. This is why it's so important that we all work on really cleaning house when it comes to managing identities in our environment. And because I love pictures, I think that this set of slides really does a nice job of showcasing exactly how the access broker role works. So we have bot herders that are infecting organizations, infecting victims, and then once they have those access credentials, they sell them to the underground marketplace, right? So you can see the ecosystem at work here with really how access brokers have shown to be incredibly effective at helping the adversary gain that initial entry point and foothold. All right, so next up, exploitation to post-exploitation. I mentioned I was going to comment on malware-free versus malware usage. Here's what we saw over the course of last year. 62% of attacks are now malware-free. Think about that for a minute. Most legacy tech takes a signature-based approach, so they're missing more than half of the adversary activity at this point. And just to make a case in point, giving you one example, Lapsus, an adversary that CrowdStrike calls Flippy Spider, first observed in 2021. A currently active e-crime threat actor. They're targeting a variety of industries, including government, law enforcement, media, telecom. And they have figured out how to exploit us using identity-centric attacks. So purchasing credentials and session tokens from access brokers, paying employees at targeted organizations for access to credentials, including their multi-factor approvals, and then also searching public code repositories for exposed credentials, a place where many organizations fall down. All right, and the last of the three here, moving on to a focus on the adversary and how they do this and how they do it so fast. So what we've got here is showing the speed with which an adversary gains a foothold in environments. And this is what we saw over the course of the last year. The spiders are what CrowdStrike calls e-crime. The rest of these are nation states, where bears are Russia, Camilla is Korea, Panda, China, Kitten for Iran. And you can see that the Russians can be very speedy when they target an organization. We've seen them come in 18 minutes. All right, and here we are where ransomware isn't slowing down. And just wanted to show you that there have been some big winners recently when it comes to ransomware. A single victim paid out $34 million in 2020 as an example of how we're seeing these threats continue to escalate. So moving into recommendations. For first recommendation is to make sure you partner with organizations that are leaning into next generation technology and thinking about new ways of doing things. The old ways aren't going to work anymore. Next step, a couple examples of these for you. One is here with the University of Idaho, where they leverage Humio, which is part of the capabilities within CrowdStrike, to save money and get faster responses on their security inquiries. They say they can get to the root of malicious activity much more quickly and much more efficiently now that they're using next generation solutions. The second is similar, a different point, where CrowdStrike has helped the state of Arizona really get their arms around the endpoint and visibility into what's going on in their infrastructure and saving money through the partnership with AWS and the marketplace, along with CrowdStrike. Another recommendation, pay attention to what your cyber insurers are seeing as important. Endpoint is right in there, as is multi-factor. Look at reports like CrowdStrike's Global Threat Report. Our top 5 findings this past year alone, 82% increase in ransomware-related data leaks, and those were double in the education sector. Look at technologies that help you get there faster. CrowdStrike has a 1-10-60 mantra where it's important to identify the issue in a minute, analyze it in 10, and resolve it in 60 in order to stay in front of the adversary. All right, so the CrowdStrike platform, leveraging next-gen technology for us includes endpoint security, a focus in cloud security, a focus in threat intelligence, which is really where we were born, identity protection, which is relatively new for us in the last couple of years, again, embracing zero trust and the initiatives going on at many of your organizations, as well as security and IT ops. One that I wanted to highlight in particular here is our extended detection and response, where your technology partners are getting better at working closely together to stop processes that shouldn't be running in your environment. The last innovative tech piece I wanted to mention to you really is the Falcon X Recon, what we call our digital risk monitoring solution, where we can help you understand what's going on in the deep and dark web. We have lots of access to indicators of compromise, lots of different sites, social media posts that have really helped organizations stay a few steps ahead of the adversary. Work with organizations that do things like get out in front of the latest attacks, like CrowdStrike had 2 points where we would have stopped the sunburst activity. One was related to the endpoint and the other related to identity. Work with strategic partners that will give you key takeaways around identity configuration, access monitoring, incident response. And lastly, one thing I love to do is I read our latest reports, and we put out a global set of recommendations, and these are the top 6. Creating a culture of cybersecurity, along through the rest of them. The main one I wanted to put a fine point on today is controlling your remote access, refraining from exposing SMB and RDP ports to the internet. It's super important, and so many organizations fall down on that point. All right, so with that, that's the end of the main presentation, and I'm looking to see if we have a moment for questions.
Yeah, we do. Tina, thank you so much. That was a lot of information that we packed in very, very quickly. I'm very impressed. And I have to say, I love CrowdStrike presentations. Your graphics are just next level.
Thank you. Thank you.
We do have a couple of questions, so are you ready to dive in?
Absolutely. Ready to dive in. Let's do it.
Perfect. Okay, I do want to remind everybody that I have put up the poll here. We want to know what other information you would like to get from CrowdStrike about the CrowdStrike solution. So please do take a minute, fill that out, let us know. And while we're kind of doing that, I'd like to ask this question from Deb. Deb is wondering about the potential to get a free trial. And also asking about solutions to issues as you're finding them, as they're coming up. So I guess wondering maybe how involved or hands-on the CrowdStrike team could be in helping the teams react to some of the things that they're identifying.
Great question. Great questions, Deb. So in short, yes, we offer a free trial. We have a number of different capabilities, but including a CrowdStrike store, where we try to make it as frictionless as possible for you to test out our technology. I'm a huge believer. As the CISO for Arizona State University, we tested the heck out of CrowdStrike before we purchased it, and interestingly, it stopped everything we needed to stop, and it didn't disrupt my organization. In particular, if you work in a hospital setting, you have doctors who need to not be interrupted. In my world, it was making sure faculty weren't interrupted, and they didn't even know CrowdStrike was coming except we told them. And for anyone who has implemented an endpoint solution before, that is virtually unheard of. Usually there's some degradation in response time or something. But in short, yes, we absolutely offer a trial, and we ask you, we plead with organizations to test us at scale, because we work very effectively, but also at scale, and many in the industry do not. Secondly, do we offer solutions to issues you find or help solve problems? Absolutely. We do it in a variety of ways. We believe that technology is complements people, and the people might be in your organization, or if you're running low on staff, we offer what we call complete solutions, where we basically serve as an extension of your team. We also offer cybersecurity maturity assessments and things to help you understand where you might need to move next if you're looking for proactive things. Hopefully that helps with some of that, but absolutely, we do both of those.
Yeah. Awesome. So there you go, Deb. You've got some cool follow-up there. We also have a question here from Harvey, wondering if CrowdStrike is going to replace his conventional antivirus.
Absolutely. What I would say is that not only is CrowdStrike basically antivirus on steroids, but it's basically the next generation. Yes, we package all of what was important in antivirus tools of the past decade and a half, but really leaned into the detection and response space, where we aren't just looking. We don't use signatures. We use artificial intelligence and machine learning to identify threat actor activity before they hit. So we don't have to have seen a particular signature and push it out. That's not the way we work at all. We have an extremely different model, but we absolutely are 100% replacement for traditional conventional antivirus.
Awesome. Well, honestly, Tina, I wish we could keep going, but we do have to leave it there today. But to everyone that asked a question that we didn't get to, again, CrowdStrike will be following up with you, and please do continue to, I'm seeing a few answers trickling in on that poll, so keep filling that out. Tina, thank you again so much for just an absolutely incredible presentation. Before you run, if anyone wants to get started with CrowdStrike, if they're ready to jump in, what do you recommend as the first step?
Oh, the first step is just reach out to us on our website, and we will respond to you immediately with a field team that can aid you with whatever direction you'd like to go. We have 22 capabilities now, not just in the endpoint, but also in the log detection and identity spaces and so many more. And we'd love to work with you.
I love that. Okay, well, thanks again, Tina, and I appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you.
Okay, well, another big thank you to everyone who filled out the poll and submitted a question. And I do want to remind you all, if you haven't already done so, please do head on over to the handouts tab, and you can actually find the 2022 Global Threat Report from CrowdStrike. Super interesting. There's just, the handouts tab today is just jam-packed full of exciting things. So please do go click around, make sure to download those resources, or at least open those tabs and save them for later. And as I'm sure you know, we have reached the end of our EcoCast, which means it is time for our very last prize drawing. So I do want to remind you all that you do need to be in live attendance at our EcoCast today, and we will be following up with all 3 winners about claiming their prizes after we wrap. So the final winner of a $500 Amazon gift card today is Andy Chow from California. Andy Chow from California. Not only do you get to live in beautiful California, now you've got $500 to spend on, I assume, a fan, an air conditioning unit. So we've got, I'm just going to read this list again. Connor Stillwagon of Missouri, Jinwei Lin of Washington, and Andy Chow of California are winners today of that $500 Amazon gift card. So congrats to you all. Okay, well, I'm going to remind you all that if you are attending today and you are loving what you're seeing, you want to be a part of a future EcoCast or MegaCast, we do very much want to hear from you, so please do reach out to us at connect@actualtechmedia. And on that note, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank all of our speakers from Sophos, Gigamon, Rubrik, Progress Software, Synology, and CrowdStrike for making this EcoCast possible. What a day it's been. I hope that you've all gotten some really interesting insight into some of the IT tech, the cloud approaches, and solutions that are really specific to what you're working on in government and education institutions. I know that I've learned a lot, and I've really loved chatting with our fascinating speakers and all of you here today. I do want to throw out a special thank you to everyone who asked questions, filled out those polls. You know, having these kind of open conversations is what makes these webinars so special and so fun to be a part of. So thank you again for being a part of that. Speaking of fun, be sure to come join us for the Expert Series on this Friday. That's July 15th for a discussion about the layers of defense in a comprehensive security strategy. This is incredibly important. Let's peel those layers apart together. So come join us Friday, July 15th at 12 p.m. Eastern. That's 9 a.m. Pacific. That slide there is clickable. So if you click on it right now, it'll take you to the registration page and you can sign up. Going to be a great session, so make sure to register, and hopefully I will see you there. Well, I hope that we get to chat again at an EcoCast, MegaCast, Summit, Expert Series, or webinar soon. And until then, have an absolutely beautiful rest of your day.